The Mega Man series is distinct for how repetitive its formula is. It's the purest form of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, down the line, such a lack of innovation led the series to lose a lot of the relevancy it held during the NES days. Mega Man X managed to light the spark for a bit longer, but not for long. That very series fell into similar pitfalls, and was further scorned for it. The classic series at least could fall into a more comedic tone with the overuse of Dr. Wily, but the X series, which was to be taken more seriously, made it really obnoxious to see Sigma as the final boss on almost each entry. Thankfully, the story would evolve into something with a bit more nuance. The Mega Man Zero series is often regarded by several fans to be the best that the franchise has to offer. It was also something long in the making, for one of its creators, Keiji Inafune, expressed desire for a long time to make a story about the titular character Zero, a wish made more apparent as time would go on. The games were developed by Inti Creates, a studio composed of ex-Capcom employees, meaning that the series should at least be in good hands. And in good hands it was, as they were also in charge of the direct follow-up series, Mega Man ZX. Both series share a lot of similarities in gameplay, although Zero remained for the most part identical to what came before, and ZX saw fit to branch out and do its own thing with a more Metroidvania-oriented design. Even still, people pair them together since they play very similarly, a sentiment Capcom shared as they put all Zero and ZX games under the same legacy collection. And they also just so happen to feature pretty comprehensive stories that take far more center place compared to the X series. With that said, since I like to give the backstory of the shit I discuss, and it will be helpful to somewhat better grasp what's going on, you best open up, because here comes the lore airplane.
There goes. There goes the context plane.
In the year 2001, two scientists, Dr. Thomas Light and Dr. Albert Wily, would engage in a feud that would last for way too long, as Wily attempted on numerous occasions to take over the world with his army of robot masters. Whether he created them or casually borrowed them for his own purpose depends on the title. In order to stop Wily, Dr. Light would send his super fighting robot Mega Man into action, disposing of the robot masters and defeating Dr. Wily. Repeat this for 12 or so games, and that's all she wrote for classic series. Yeah, it might come across as a gross oversimplification. It skips over many characters introduced, but really the classic games do boil down to Wily doing some scheme yet again. But we do get relevant enough lore droplets. In Mega Man 8, a mysterious space virus crashes on Earth and makes robots go haywire, something that Dr. Wily would take notice of and attempted to weaponize. He would also begin the construction of a new robot prototype so powerful that Mega Man would pale in comparison. But that was mostly a background project. Simultaneously, Dr. Light was also working on a prototype of his own, called Mega Man X, or X just for short. X's main distinction was that he was able to think for himself, being unbound by the command of a human being. Whether he uses such power to save humanity or destroy it lies upon his shoulders. But to know the outcome, we get an unexplained time skip. What happens to the original cast? Who knows? They just die of age or something. Fast forward 100 or so years later, an archaeologist called Dr. Kane manages to find X and wakes him up. The discovery of a self-thinking robot was so astonishing, he had the brilliant idea to create more of them. Make a whole fucking society of them, why not? What could possibly go wrong? But because they function differently relative to conventional robots, these new age machines would go by the label of Reploids, an amalgamation of the words replica and android. But alongside this label, another one was also branded for those Reploids that were to be deemed as a threat to humanity and other Reploids alike, Mavericks. Thus, a force known as the Maverick Hunters was established, as means to reduce the amount of outbreaks and collateral damage. At one point, the leader of the Maverick Hunters, Sigma, headed towards a distress signal located in an isolated laboratory. There he clashed with a highly aggressive robot, with the intent of destroying anything in its path. Fortunately, Sigma is able to put a stop to his rampage, but not without suffering major damages, and unbeknownst to him, being inflicted with a catastrophic virus that would become a major struggle throughout the series. As for the robot, or Reploid rather, now referred to as Zero, he was taken to Dr. Kane for analysis, and thankfully any Maverick traits were gone. He would eventually become more laid back while still retaining high combat skills and tactics, leading to him joining the Maverick Hunters and becoming pals for life with X. It was then that Sigma would start his path of destruction, with the help of many Mavericks that would be recruited to his cause. As the series went onward, the structure of the X storylines would become just as formulaic as classic, replacing Mega Man for X and Dr. Wily for Sigma. While more things were happening, such as Zero dying and then being reassembled, Sigma becoming a full-on virus himself, this fucking cutscene.
What am I fighting for?
Really, it was about the same, stopping the bad guys of the weak formula. Then Mega Man X5 came along, and this is where shit gets real. The Sigma virus has fully infected the space colony Eurasia, and is on a course collision towards Earth, so it's up to X and Zero to gather the parts for either the Enigma cannon or a space shuttle. That way can destroy the colony before reaching the planet. Now X5 is infamous for having two endings, which can happen at complete random. One where either the cannon or shuttle succeed, and the other where they fail and the colony crashes. In both endings, Zero dies. It's how the death occurs that makes it more interesting. In the good ending, Zero sacrifices himself to protect X, so he can live life and make a better future, carrying his saber onwards as a memento of his best friend. In the bad ending, Zero's true self awakens, as the Sigma virus was originally his own. When X and Zero confront, both of them faint. Zero quickly regains composure and sacrifices himself here to protect X, though it happens much earlier. It may come across as proof of Zero's actual nature though, and the virus ultimately forcing him to act like he did. After defeating Sigma, X is in horrible shape but manages to recover. This comes at the cost of any memories regarding Zero, leading him to focus on other things like creating an utopian city. What should we call it though? Something like New Arcadia? Nah, sounds pretentious. Elysium? Yeah, Elysium sounds good, I like that one. Now here's where we gotta hit that pause button and discuss something real quick. As fans of the series know, this was meant to be the intended final entry of the X series. The good ending would lead to the Zero series, and the bad one to the Legends series. Elysium happens to be the final level in Legends 2, and that name drop would have served as a loose but effective connection. But then we got X6. To many, this game is the piece of shit that ruins everything, making the story a lot more convoluted. The story revolves around this scientist, Gate, but he's completely irrelevant to all this. All that matters is that Zero somehow came back to life. Essentially, and I quote, he hit himself while he tried to repair himself. Yeah, I totally buy that, like I buy a paperweight for $800. More relevant than Zero coming back is him getting sealed up in a capsule, as means of containing any traces of the virus within him. The thing is, it's not specified when this happens, whether it's at the end of the X series, or right after the events of X6. As for X7 and X8, nothing substantial happens outside of introducing Axel.
Out of the way! Out of the way! Are you stupid? You're in danger if you just stand there. Get a move on!
Although X8's story paints an interesting perspective, after constant Maverick outbreaks, the construction of an elevator to the moon begins, called the Jacob Project.
The endless Reploid rebellions continue. Humans, however, have begun migrations to the moon, thanks to new technology.
And while Sigma isn't the final boss for once, he still has plenty of influence. Yet his body is visibly withered and can't restore itself as efficiently, hopefully hinting at its eventual eradication. Axel is knocked unconscious at the end of X8, but nothing more comes out of that. It's speculated that the wound might have been fatal, and that's where the story of the X series ends as far as we know. So how does it connect to the Zero series? Does it connect at all to the Zero series?
Game Boy Advance.
俺を目覚めさせてどうしようって言うんだ。
ゼロから始まる衝撃の新シリーズ。ロックマンゼロ。カプコン。
The most striking element of the Zero games is by far the art style. It was handled by Toru Nakayama, an illustrator specialized in mechas and character design. He would provide a much more sleek design for Zero, as well as the rest of the cast. It was a very bold decision to ditch the iconic white and red design for something a lot more toned down, desaturated. Whether it pays off or works against the overall games is up to the individual. I personally like it. Having played the X games and contrasting that with the faster pace of the Zero games, I can see it would have felt difficult to translate with the bulkier armor. Not impossible, but more challenging. but I'm willing to assume it also was due to sprite and color palette limitations. These games were all released on the Game Boy Advance and eventually the Nintendo DS. As to why they weren't released on consoles, we'll never know. But given home consoles at the time were heavily focused on 3D games and not 2D ones, maybe it was the right call. The closest we got to a 3D model for Nakayama Zero was a guest character in Onimusha Blade Warriors.
What'd you wake me up for?
Yeah, never mind, we dodged the bullet. Let's get to 01. As soon as the game starts, it immediately jumps into action, as unfamiliar faces seem to be running away from an enemy force. This intro generates more questions than answers. Who are these people? Why are they being gunned down by these mechaniloids? And why do they have a resemblance to X at that? Also, you felt bad for the green biker dude in the X2 intro. A lot more people die in this one, and it's slightly more graphic. Upon breaking through a sealed chamber, the runaway squadron managed to find what they were looking for. However, time is not on their favor, as enemy forces close in on them, and their firepower is running out. The young scientist, Ciel, is forced to sacrifice her companion Passy in order to revive Zero. Nice knowing you, a fairy thing with 10 seconds of screen time. With no time to spare, Zero instantly reads the situation and jumps into action, as he effortlessly mows down the enemy troops with one of the dead soldiers' busters. No saber yet though. Right off the bat, Zero feels smooth to control, with a movement accuracy the X games struggle to match. Firing the buster at enemies feels crunchy and satisfying, and nothing is overly hazardous yet. Great start so far, but eventually Zero and Ciel come across a couple dead ends. Ciel gets captured by one of those imposing golems that was chasing the group earlier. Unfortunately, the buster doesn't do shit against them, and there's no way out either, when suddenly a mysterious entity shows up and grants him the Z-Saber. Can you tell this was intended to go after X5? And in hilarious fashion, the golem goes down in one hit. The fact that he was able to defeat a golem is proof enough for Ciel that they did find the legendary Reploid Zero. Unfortunately, our boy suffers from amnesia and doesn't remember anything. He even questions whether he's the original or not.
Foreshadowing as a narrative device.
Ciel reassures him that by saving her, it serves as enough proof that he is the original. You know what? Sure, we can go with that. Welcome to the Resistance Base, a cozy facility beneath a hole 6 feet underground, far enough from the clutches of the tyrannical empire of Neo-Arcadia. Times are dire as energy stocks are running out, and there's barely any signs of nature out in the open. This is a far cry from the days of old, and countless Reploids are retired on a daily basis, all under the rule of none other than X. As far as we know, he's the one orchestrating all operations to dispose of anyone daring to oppose his regime. And that's about all we get in terms of plot for the time being. X is the main bad guy, and the Resistance is in dogshit conditions, so we gotta help out in order to survive. While introducing a lot of interesting concepts, 01 is incredibly bare bones in terms of delivery. We get a surface level description of our surroundings and Zero's memory struggles, but it's not overly elaborated, and it won't be for a long time as the following missions focus entirely on providing backup for the Resistance. Like the very next one, requesting the shutdown of the disposal center. The first proper mission already highlights some of the issues that typically plague the Zero series, this being screen crunch, obnoxious enemies, and gimmicks that may or may not worsen the experience. It's not totally awful here, just so happens to be a very mild gimmick, but let it be a sign of things to come. Worst yet, we start off with a very gimped Zero, only having a single slash and not even a full charge shot, so enemies will take a bit longer overall to take care of. And here's a very relevant tip going forward. Always make sure to set control type B over the rest of them. It will allow you to use both the main and secondary weapons interchangeably at a faster rate. Type A is less convenient by having to hold the R button, and Type C doesn't make clear enough which weapon you're currently using. This tip applies to all 4 games, so best to take a few seconds to go to options and change that setting. Trust me, it will improve the experience. As soon as you head into the boss, get ready to get your ass spread wide open by Aztec Falcon. This is not a beginner-friendly boss. His patterns are too fast and hard to predict for someone that just picked up the game. The trick is to try landing as many air slashes as possible, as it's your best asset currently against him. You'll need patience, but not too much of it because you have 80 seconds to kill him, and it's not a scripted boss this time around. But once you deal with a final blow with the saber, you get greeted with the signature finisher of the series. Once we're done with that, we head back to the base for further instructions, but not before picking up the elemental chips. In short, these replace the extra weapons from the classic series, and it's a lot more straightforward. There's just 3 of them, and they show up in all 6 games. The structure of the Zero series is very straightforward. You have your intro stage, or stages, followed by the first 4 levels, an intermission, the last 4 levels, and the final stages. You're able to choose among a series of missions with a vague enough title and description. As you complete missions, others will be made available. But the thing is, missions can be failed. There's the option to retreat and automatically fail the mission, or lose all your lives, something that will happen very often if you're just bad. To add insult to injury, lives do not restock upon a game over. Imagine beginning a mission with 0 lives, that's embarrassing. So what happens after you fail enough missions? You just move on to the end of the game, just like that. No bad ending or secret dialogue, as far as I know. You will miss out on extra goodies such as element chips, cyber elves and new weapons. But at the end of the day, missions can be treated as a suggestion. But let's say you're a man of integrity. You want to beat the game the right way and clear those missions. But you keep getting your ass kicked and waste lives constantly. Isn't there a workaround? Pretty much just save after every mission. Your lives will still not restock, but at least it should be tolerable. Or save state, I don't care. Speaking more about your arsenal, it's possible to level up your weapons, but it can take a while to do. The easy shortcut is heading to the previous disposal center area and grind with these respawning towers. After several hits, the weapon will level up and allow you to perform a new action. For the saber, this includes additional slashes and aerial roll. For the buster, you can shoot 4 bullets on screen, and in both cases, you can charge them up. It takes a few minutes of grinding to unlock stuff like the charge attack, slowing down the pace of the game a fair share. The charge attack is worth it though. It makes otherwise challenging bosses a lot easier by comparison. Yeah, that's a common sentiment that people share. The first Mega Man Zero is very difficult. It's really not, at least if you know most of the tricks. And this doesn't involve cyber elves, which I'll get into later. But really having the charge attack available and not fucking up on the platforming segments makes the overall experience slightly smoother, with no additional help to speak of. But if you're brand new to the games, there's a good chance you're gonna get your ass handed regardless. At the end of a mission, you're given a rank depending on how you've performed. It's important to make the distinction that the letter grade is not based on the stage you just beat, but the total average across the entire game. So you got a really shitty score, you may still get an A rank thanks to the others doing average. The average is never shown because, fuck you. The purpose of ranking differs across titles, but for now its only function is to make the game more difficult by giving bosses extra moves the better you perform, because fuck you. It's not very polished though. Oftentimes you're given missions of relatively short length and low enemy count, making you score less as a result. And the Cyber Elves, the main feature of the Zero series, it tanks your score if you've used too many, but for some it's still worthwhile since score doesn't matter in this game. So what are these little code critters anyway? Story-wise, they're sentient computer programs capable of communication and sacrificing themselves in order to power up a Reploid. And I do mean sacrifice. Once their effects are used, the Cyber Elf dies. I feel sorry for them if it wasn't for the fact the best ones are expensive as hell to raise.
Well, fuck. Well, fuck. Well, fuck.
The E-crystals required to evolve a Cyber Elf can be outrageously large, and you need them at max level to be used in the first place. Oh, and by the way, remember sub-tanks? Those very useful health backups present since X1? Only in Cyber Elf form, you best pay up to 1200 E-crystals, buddy. There's a few Cyber Elves free of cost, but most of the time their effects are underwhelming, except maybe the quick recovery ones. Going into each mission specifically, they don't really progress the story in any significant way. All Zero and Ciel are currently doing is providing safety for the Resistance soldiers. This includes hijacking a train to retrieve a Cyber Elf, rescuing more soldiers, and occupying a factory to generate E-crystals. Succeeding in this last one actually allows you to revisit the place to collect the E-crystals it made. It's not enough to fully raise a Cyber Elf though. I gotta commend the visuals. The lack of color is highly dominant, and a lot of places have this mix of lacking in detail while also packing too much of it. But in a way it manages to fit. This is meant to be a time of crisis, and the lack of resources prevents anyone from doing any fancy shit. At least the lower class Reploids can't. Although sound-wise it's not as good. Now we all know that the GBA sound chip was fucking terrible and it left 27 children deaf thanks to Pokemon Emerald. Here a lot of sound effects and music bits come off as highly compressed and muffled. Again, shitty sound chip, but with the hindsight of what comes afterwards, it is unfortunate that a lot of the soundtrack feels generic and lacking in sound fonts. It does have some bangers though. Oh look, it's time for the middleway segment as I like to call it. This time around we have a big fat drill mechanoid. This mission can actually be failed if you stall for long enough, but you gotta take your sweet time for that. It's not as short as 80 seconds. Either way, easy come, easy go. About halfway, stakes begin to rise as the 4 Guardians of Master X are introduced. Harpuya is the Electric Wind Guardian, judging Zero harshly on the basis that he's siding with the Mavericks, apparently. Fafnir is the Fire Guardian, someone that looks for a good fight and the thought of confronting Zero excites him. Leviathan, the Ice Guardian, somewhat looks down upon her teammates, but much like Fafnir, the thought of battling Zero sparks interest in her. Finally, Phantom, the Dark Guardian, shares the same main goal as Harpuya of disposing of Mavericks, and understands that Zero is the primary threat, not the Resistance. He also has the most peculiar confrontations. His first encounter happens right at the start of the mission, and to add insult to injury, the Guardian's missions are arguably the worst in the game. Sure, the escort mission is painfully slow, but at least it didn't get severe cases of screen crunch. There's a notable amount of leaps of faith that you must perform in order to progress, as well as wall hogging, just so you can see the platforms below and not fall into a pit. Worse yet, the bomb defusing mission has an added timer on top of the restrictive level design. It's easy to see why it's the low point of the game, not supported by the fact all 4 missions recycle a lot of level design from prior ones. Once you're done with all the busy work, the plot finally moves forward. It found the keys of the car under all the chicken gravy on the floor. The long-expected New Arcadia strike takes place and everyone is ordered to evacuate, although Zero plans on negotiating with the attackers. Before any of that happens, Ciel laments having put everyone into this predicament, confessing that she created New Arcadia and X. But with little time to process that, Zero jumps into action and gets rid of...
Monkey!
This bastard took a couple attempts though, and too stubborn to use element chips outside boss rushes. Having averted the complete destruction of the Resistance, everyone is left in a conflicted state. There's not enough firepower for a counterattack, and the one capable of doing anything cannot get to Neo Arcadia, since the coordinates are not available. Suddenly, a familiar face shows up, granting Zero the access to the capital, wanting to see the end of its copy. It's a bit on the nose, but we can wait for a bit. And with no time to spare, Zero leaves the Resistance to fight off the New Arcadian forces. What will happen to the Resistance itself? I'm sure they'll be fine. I'll have this guy watching over. Of course an equivalent to the Wily Castle was needed, so here come the New Arcadia shrines. The visual contrast to how dilapidated the city was and how pristine this place is highlights how far from home you currently are. Albeit aesthetically pretty, this is a hostile place, throwing its strongest soldiers at you. The first level is a 3-boss gauntlet, featuring Tundra in Agony, Gravity Beetle's cousin, and my favorite, Asura Basura. The second level is a vertical tower composed of several elevating platforms and a lot of spikes. And even a devil monster makes an appearance, because of course we gotta have a devil monster in every series possible. At least it goes down easy enough. Right before the last level, Ciel shows up at the top of New Arcadia to confess that she's responsible for creating the replica of X that is currently ruling New Arcadia. Despite the prior hints, it should come across as a major reveal, but it's swept aside rather quickly. Zero's only reaction is,
I understand your frustration.
and then he fucks off to kill Copy X. It's not necessarily a negative, but it's so abrupt and doesn't add much at all because, again, it was already hinted that Ciel created Copy X. Oh, fun fact, it's been stated that she created Copy X when she was fucking 9. Yeah, apparently she was a product of genetically adjusted children for the purpose of advancing Reploid development. And boy was she talented. I was just watching SpongeBob and playing Little Big Planet when I was 9. And this bitch managed to build an all-powerful dictator. What the fuck, man? The final level is more of the same, just blitz through a few enemies until we get to the boss rush. If you did all the missions, this should be a complete breeze, otherwise it'll take a little longer, although this was only 4 out of the 8 bosses to defeat. The Guardians also return and again same deal, then your boy Phantom does this. That can actually cost you a life, by the way, in a game where death is severely discouraged. Bit of a bullshit finisher, but at long last, we made it to the final chamber. The remaining Guardians are willing to defend their master, but he steps in and asks them to retreat. At long last, we meet X, or rather the copy Ciel made. For the people that go outside, Copy X was meant to be the actual X, but was later changed in development because everyone thought it was stupid. And we already did the X versus Zero thing several times already. It was actually getting old. But they likely already coded the boss fights, so they threw in the fact that it's a clone to replace the original. As to why he's a total dickhead, it's likely because he was already born powerful, which potentially corrupted his character. Couple this with the energy crisis, and the only solution he saw fit was prioritizing human lives above Reploids by all means necessary. Compare this with the original X, someone that had to struggle to become a warrior of justice, someone that actively cared for all living beings, humans and Reploids alike. But to Copy X, it means nothing as he sees himself as the good guy, and Zero as a filthy maverick. Copy X is the final spike in difficulty in the game. The first phase is pretty good, difficult but fairly straightforward with enough telegraphs to react accordingly. Then the second phase kicks in and everything goes wrong. Copy X's angel form is hard for all the wrong reasons. You have a very small space to move around, all attacks cover a wide range and get increasingly faster, and of course, bottomless pits. To add insult to injury, his extra attack consists on spamming these paralysis rings while trying to hit you with the walls. It's a brutal final fight if you don't know what you're doing. But sooner or later, Copy X will go down. And of course he tries to take us with him. Before the curtain closes, the cyber elf that's been helping us thus far, now fully confirmed to be X, apologizes to Zero as he has to pass the torch from where he left off. Fighting for so long left him not only exhausted, but apathetic to the whole thing. Zero, now having recovered most of his memories and with a firm goal on sight, continues the fight to let his partner rest. And that's the game. Before wrapping up, 01 and every subsequent Zero title features both a hard mode and ultimate mode. Hard mode limits all your weapons to level 1 and is unlocked after beating the game once. while Ultimate Mode allows you to start with all weapons maxed out and all Cyber Elf effects enabled, but you normally need a full collection of whichever item the game asks. For 0-1 you have to collect and raise all the Cyber Elves to max level, which... no. The most appropriate way to describe 0-1 is as the first step. You got a lot of things right, such as tight controls and combat. However, a lot of faults are also present, like level repetition, too many weapon levels, a crystal economy, and that abhorrent life system. A lot of negatives holding the game back from its true potential, but enough positives to give it another shot.
Game Boy Advance.
誰も知らないゼロが目覚めるロックマンゼロ2カプコン
Mega Man Zero 2 begins about a year after the first game, with a severely exhausted Zero that survived a near-endless onslaught of Neo-Arcadian forces. Times have not been kind for him, as he is barely able to sustain himself, and as he desperately tries to find the resistance. But as soon as the enemy troops start approaching, he readies for action once again. That intro sequence is flawless. It recaps the past game's events and Zero's whereabouts afterwards, and with no time to waste, no hesitation, immediately jumps into action with the little energy he has left. I guess having him start with barely any health would have helped drive that point home, but perhaps it'd be overdoing it. If nothing else, the pause menu does reflect that. I love that shit. Movement and attacks are all about the same, though the Saber and Buster levels have reset to 1. I guess it makes sense after ending up exhausted, but not terribly hyped to level them back up. There's not much to this first stage. After getting far enough, the boss shows up. Same old song of waiting for openings and striking back. But after getting rid of the Mechaniloid, Zero collapses, having drained all of his energy. To make matters worse, Harpuya of all people shows up. With his foe right at his feet, he ponders whether to get rid of the Reploid responsible for killing his master. Gotta love the Aztec Falcon ride. Lazy bastard. Cut to the new Resistance base, located in... and now led by some pretty boy called El Piso. He was responsible for helping the Resistance run away from the clutches of New Arcadia and establish themselves in a new place, making him the choice as commander the more reasonable. Ciel is still in the picture though. See, there she is. She supervises El Piso's commands and makes sure to remind him the Resistance was established primarily for self-defense operations, to which he reluctantly agrees. Suddenly, Zero's body is spotted at the entrance of the base, barely conscious. This only begs the question as to what was Harpuya's reasoning back in the desert. For now, let's just get equipped for whatever bullshit missions these people send our way. Replacing the shitty triple rod from the first game is now the chain rod, a weapon that is slightly more useful but is janky to use. It works like a grappling hook, being able to attach itself to most enemies and items so you can drag them towards you. In a way, it's like the Ultra Kill's Whiplash. Except it's really not, I just wanted to bring Ultra Kill in some fashion. Also, the shield boomerang is back. Unlike the first game, this time their inclusion is mandatory, meaning the developers have likely designed certain set pieces around them, but all in due time. When talking to Ciel, she informs us about her project to solve the energy crisis, strongly believing that once solved, Neo Arcadia shouldn't have much of a reason to continue striking down Reploids. El Piso, however, rejects that idea and believes only the destruction of Neo Arcadia can bring peace back to the world. That's further reflected by the missions revolving around direct attacks towards Neo Arcadian facilities. By the way, gotta love the inclusion of boss portraits. It doesn't say much about the level itself, but at least you get a slight idea of what you might be facing off against. And you get to learn about their lovely names, such as Highleg, Arbuckle?
Today, Garfield, we're going to eat nothing but raisins.
It has to be said, the soundtrack has received a tremendous upgrade. It already was hitting on all cylinders back at the desert, but the forest track continues the hot streak. And the same can be said for the majority of the tracks in this game and the later ones. Even the visuals saw an upgrade. Everything is a lot more colorful and overall saturated, contrasted with the more grayish and bleak looking 01. Speaking more about the gameplay, not a whole lot has changed on the surface. The level system is back, which kinda sucks. I can get it for narrative purposes, but it's still a shit mechanic. To its credit, most of the levels have been accommodated a lot better, and by the time you clear all 4 missions, chances are you'll have at least the charge attack readily available. Also, sword combat just feels a lot better. This is the game where it begins to feel better to go for triple slashes rather than constant charge attacks, although in some cases, the latter is still the better option. But more relevant than that, they fixed the life system.
About fucking time, asshole!
No more mission failed bullshit. If you get a game over, you just start from the beginning with lives restocked. Thank you very much. Let us not make this mistake ever again. And cyber orbs work about the same as they did, but the cost of leveling them up has been considerably lowered. The game still penalizes you for using them in the final score, but at least their lower cost doesn't hurt as much. Speaking of score, this time around there is a good enough reason for you to play well. Bosses still get extra moves with an A rank or higher, but now you are rewarded for beating them under such conditions. EX skills are additional moves that Zero can perform with his weapons, some of which reflecting past abilities. They're not major game changers, but their inclusion is still welcome as a reward. The only problem is that rankings are still based on average across all levels, not how well you did on a stage. And the score displayed happens to be the latter still, so keep that in the back of your mind. If you want to have a constant A rank, try your best to score above 86. Alright, that's enough gameplay for now. Let's check on El Piso. Apparently his Operation Righteous Strike is ready to begin. His troops are in formation awaiting orders, but Ciel and Servo request El Piso to wait for the completion of the energy alternative. El Piso respectfully declines.
Shut the fuck up!
And goes alongside his squadron for a direct attack on Neo Arcadia. I wonder how that went. Despite all the warnings given, the resistance soldiers failed to leave a singular dent on the opposing forces, a result that everyone, especially Zero, saw coming from a mile away. Nonetheless, we gotta pick up the Twink back to base, but not before confronting the three Guardians. While Leviathan and Fafnir are only interested in fighting Zero, Harpuya outright criticizes him for wanting to rescue El Piso, as he knows he won't even return the favor. Worse, a bomb is headed towards the resistance base and will obliterate it in about 10 minutes. Thus, Zero rushes back to intercept it. The music here is really good, and I'll admit I'm a sucker for flying armadas, but nah, can't defend this level. It first starts with jumping between aircrafts that are set way too apart from one another, then an admittedly cool sequence with these electric beams, and goes down again with a boring as shit defense sequence, where you have to protect Ciel from enemy fire. Well, I already did a Counter-Strike bit, so how about this instead? As soon as Ciel defuses the bomb, Zero has to make an emergency escape through the storage compartment, but a boss still gets in the way. To many, he's just another boss, but to the 3 people who know, I salute you. Hey Joel. After the horrendous failure of Operation Righteous Strike, the few survivors managed to make it back safely. Except, El Piso is missing. Full of regret and frustration of his failure, he's left the resistance to seek the destruction of New Arcadia and humanity on his own. The cracks of his character become more apparent from this point onwards, and no better point than now to give some expanded backstory about him and his vendetta towards New Arcadia. El Piso was formerly known as TK-31, a New Arcadian errand boy. During the research of an abandoned library, he found forbidden data about something known as Project El Piso. The inner logistics of said project I'll keep for later, since they'll become relevant. But for now, you just need to know they led to a major catastrophe. Suddenly, an alarm activated and Harpuya quickly located TK-31, commanding him to forget everything he saw. Shortly after, TK-31 would be labeled as a maverick, likely to prevent the extension of sensitive information onto the wider public. He escaped arrest and made it to the Resistance, dropping his serial number and calling himself El Piso, perhaps as a reminder of the reason he escaped the New Arcadian regime. As for his hatred of humans, it's a matter of association. Copy X's rule sacrificed countless Reploids for the alleged sake of humanity, so he desires to inflict back just as much pain to them. Man, that's deep. And would you believe me if I told you most of the previous information came from a fucking Japanese-only audio drama? Seriously, there's a bunch more of these explaining various story threads, and it begs the question, why not animate it instead? Anyhow, Zero already warned him that New Arcadia's destruction is not a simple task, and it's now crystal clear he doesn't have the firepower to make any notable impact. With no time to waste before he does something reckless, the search for El Piso begins. Unfortunately, in all of these missions, the Guardians aren't present for... well, they just really wanted a rematch. They're not even hiding it, they were really itching for a good fight, and Zero is the only one capable of providing one. That's just adorable in a twisted way. Not even Harpuya is shy of admitting he enjoys fighting with Zero. Oh, there he is! El Piso is all fine and dandy. He's been busy making preparations to destroy New Arcadia with the help of the Baby Elves, these two cyber elves that are far stronger and influential. And to do so, he plans on breaking into the capital and releasing the Dark Elf, a highly powerful creature that X is currently guarding. Thus begins the race against the clock. By the way, when he dashes, his sprite has a 1 and 2 in them, likely as testing leftovers. You will never unsee this. While the hunt is taking place, I guess we can talk about the stages. Overall, they're better adapted for a Zero who already has most of his weapons fairly leveled up, but doesn't go terribly overboard in terms of complexity. They recycle the aesthetics of previous levels, but it's nowhere near as brazen as before. At least the backgrounds and layouts change. The game is at times guilty of very steep dash jumps. It's possible they were meant to be cleared with the chain rod, but frankly both ways are not the most safe. Furthermore, Screen Crunch continues rearing its ugly head. It's gotten better, but it's still something that is unfortunately not going away. On the positive side, they rectified in one key feature that will make your game significantly easier. Sub-tanks are back as standard collectibles.
Get that up, yeah.
There's only 2 available on stages and on tricky locations, while the other 2 are still present as cyber elves. But just having one at all without having to waste a cyber elf reduces any stress significantly. Last we have the matter of forms. These enable brand new effects for Zero to use, although it typically trades some attributes for others. A lot of them are very gimmicky for all the wrong reasons, as they tend to restrict your offense capabilities by a large margin. The only ones worth going with are Active and Rise form. How do you unlock them though? Good question. I'm sure some NPCs tell you how to get some of them. Servo outright tells you to use certain weapons frequently, and it checks out. But other times it's not as obvious. Neat concept, poor execution. Well, that's all I got about gameplay. I wonder what happened to the pretty boy. Oh, that's not a good sign. El Piso has managed to make it to where the Dark Elf is resting, and is doing everything in his power to break the seal. While X is preventing that from happening. He can't do so for very long, so it's up to Zero to make his way towards New Arcadia and X's resting place. But not before meeting a couple roadblocks in the way in the form of the temples. Much later, we make it to where Harpuya is, but El Piso is also there. He's made progress in his efforts to break the seal, as the Dark Elf is almost free. This turn of events must be rather vindictive for El Piso right now, having the man that wronged him, the strongest of the 4 Guardians and current leader of New Arcadia, bending the knee in defeat, and about to forcefully confront the only realistic threat in his way. Harpuya outright begs Zero to kill him, as he can no longer control his actions due to the Baby Elf's influence. Quite dramatic shit. Harpuya survives, and Zero makes a mad dash towards X Chamber, at the very top of New Arcadia. I wonder who will be the dipshit that kills itself this time during the boss rush. Oh, this is bad. They do have a rather stupid way to die, just banging into each other like in oncoming traffic. That's enough time wasting. We made it to X's chamber, and so did El Piso. Unfortunately, he mobilizes Zero then and there, and prepares to deliver the killing blow to X. I always felt the impact of this scene is undersold. This is the death of Mega Man X, the titular character of a then 7-entry sub-series, the final creation of Dr. Light, someone whose greatest strength was his kindness towards both humanity and Reploids alike, ready to take action against any injustice in the world. And in a more meta sense, the one character that was able to rejuvenate the Mega Man franchise when the formula was getting stale. That Mega Man X has been destroyed. With the death of X, the seal containing the Dark Elf has been broken, and the two halves unite. El Piso acquires their power and becomes near unrecognizable, fully immersed in his wish for the death of humanity. The final boss itself is a lot more toned down compared to the Copy X one. It helps that we have sub-tanks this time, but his attacks are not the most complex to dodge, and he leaves himself open frequently. Clearly not having enough power, El Piso begs for more. Nah, fuck it, I'm keeping that in. If the previous form was easy, so is this one. Most of Dark Elf El Piso's attacks are slow and predictable, leaving ample time to land a charge attack. It's rather anticlimactic, but hey, I much prefer that over bottomless pit bullshit. And that's the game. The game ends on a rather dire note. El Piso lays on the ground, regretful of his actions during his last moments. On his own, he harbored vendetta towards New Arcadia, but the influence of the baby elves further amplified that aspect and corrupted it into a destructive force. For a brief moment, the Dark Elf surprisingly heals El Piso by transforming him into a cyber elf. He's been granted a second chance at life, though for someone in his situation, life now only serves as a punishment, only being able to atone for his sins. Before fading into the skies, the Dark Elf calls out to Zero for some reason, as if they have met each other before. Cyber Elf X shows up and adds that she had a different name back then, but the Dark Elf label stuck after someone called Dr. Weil placed the curse upon her. Who is this Dr. Weil though? Don't worry about it, just keep it in the back of your mind. Before moving on, I'd like to bring the attention to the New Game Plus feature. By saving a game after you finish it, reloading it will put you back at the very start. All your weapons levels will be reset to 1, but any EX skills, side rolls, etc. are kept on replays. This was also present for 01, but it feels more relevant here since there's more shit to collect and it adds a lot more replay value, so it makes coming back to 02 a lot more pleasant. 02 was a clear improvement on all the foundations that 01 laid out. It streamlined its formula to something more conventional, while still retaining its own identity, and introduced brand new elements like the forms and EX skills that can surely be further improved upon. Moreover, the story saw a tremendous expansion in both its delivery and contents. It might be a downside on replay playthroughs since you can't skip the cutscenes, but they're at least well executed. I enjoyed the development that all the characters received, and the flavor text helps to flesh out the world. And now more than ever, one can only hope another sequel continues to improve upon the formula even further.
Game Boy Advance. Rockman 03 Capcom.
To many, Mega Man 03 is considered the peak of the Zero series. Hell, for some it's even the best Mega Man game period. A game with such a positive reputation surely delivers, right? After a brief recap of the last two games, 03 begins 2 months after the release of the Dark Elf. That's now become the Resistance primary goal alongside the Baby Elves. In the meantime, negotiations between CL and New Arcadia began by sharing a sample of her energy alternative, the CL system. Bit egotistical, ain't it?
You're talking out of your fucking ass!
But according to her, it could actually solve the energy crisis at hand. She currently awaits a reply from New Arcadia in order to strike a deal and finally put an end to their conflict. Little did they know, things would escalate for the worst. A massive spacecraft in the shape of a sword has landed in the middle of a snowy wasteland, and it appears to emit energy readings similar to those of the Dark Elf. Zero goes ahead to investigate, and that's where the game begins. There's only one change and one change alone that should make 03 the potential best candidate as the first game for a newcomer. There are no weapon level ups, everything is maxed out from the start. Oh, and even better than that, skippable cutscenes. It hasn't even been a minute, yet this game already improves upon the previous one. As soon as Zero makes it to the ship, New Arcadia already beat the Resistance to the punch, and whatever they're facing is nothing short of monstrous. Omega, the ultimate Reploid of war. Its mere existence speaks for itself. It makes short work of both Leviathan and Fafnir at the same time. But no problem, right? It's only the first boss, and we've fought much worse before. This giant piece of shit is nothing. I guess it won't be as easy as I figured. But before round 2 can take place, Harpuya shows up and gives it a shot, but to no avail. Suddenly, another new face shows up, seemingly the one in charge of Omega, and arguably more dangerous. Dr. Weil is a cruel and manipulative individual. Well, in fairness, we don't know much about him, beyond being the man responsible for altering the Dark Elf. Even Harpuya agrees that he's a shady motherfucker, arguing he got banished from New Arcadia long ago. But you know who doesn't question him? A rebuilt Copy X of all people. Yup, this prick is back thanks to Weil rebuilding him, and is lifting his banishment as thanks. Yeah, nothing can go wrong because of that. Harpuya's rule was at least lenient enough, but under Copy X, it's bound to become more aggressive yet again. Now the goal is to not only track the Dark Elf and her children before Weil gets to her, but also figure out what New Arcadia might be up to. Back in action for the third time, eh? Not a whole lot has changed between titles, though the game feels more adapted to having the triple slash and charge attacks early on, so enemies and bosses can both afford to act more aggressive. Two major changes are worth noticing. For starters, rankings finally display average scores. If you ask me, ranks should be on an individual level, but if they're gonna stick to average, they at least met the bare minimum, because obviously EX skills return, and they saw an upgrade of sorts as well. In 02 they felt somewhat undercooked and not that satisfying to use, but some of them have been adjusted, like the down smash hitbox is in front of you, not below. Even skills for the alternate weapons are pretty good, the 1000 slash being one of the most popular choices. The combat for 03 has been polished so much, to the point it eventually inspired people to do combo videos, where they get boss executions as fast as possible with little to no interruption. And speaking of alternate weapons, the recoil rod has become many people's favorite. The aforementioned 1000 slash being one reason, but also as means of movement. If you aim a charged recoil rod to the ground, it acts like a high jump, which can carry dash momentum. Hell, you can even pogo from enemies. It's a versatile tool for combat and movement alike. It can even break certain surfaces, like this one containing a secret disc. These are a brand new collectible containing all sorts of trivia regarding enemies and NPCs. They can usually be ignored, but it's still a fun collectible to pick up regardless. They also happen to contain cyber elves now, which I'll get into a little later. For now, while the Resistance is busy scanning the enemy's movements, the enemy is planning its movements. Harpuya questions the legitimacy of Dr. Weil, considering his past banishment. But Copy X disregards such concerns, reminding Harpuya he's not actually in charge. And after having located the Dark Elf in a populated area, the main course of action is to launch a fucking missile with Omega in it. With no time to waste, Zero boards the missile to try and intercept it. but it seems the baby elves are there to greet him. It's not too complicated of a boss fight. You have to multitask between two enemies, but at least they share a single health bar. But despite Zero besting the elves, they succeeded by stalling him out. The missile crashes.
Oh, I've wasted my life.
A horrifying scene takes place. Plenty of lives were lost due to the impact. Omega and the Dark Elf reunite at long last, and Zero is about to be taken out by the mightiest foe yet. Suddenly, Harpuya arrives, condemning such a massacre as opposite of the New Arcadian values he's fought for. This is the defining moment of Harpuya. By committing treason, he upholds his beliefs that no human lives must be wasted, not even for something like the Dark Elf. He's no match for Omega though, and takes near fatal damage. In the end, both he and Zero are transferred back to the Resistance base. Gotta admit, I love this interaction where Zero casually brushes off Ciel's concerns, right after being severely injured due to a missile crash. God bless this red bastard. A call from New Arcadia comes in. Copy X and Weil are willing to agree to a truce if Ciel hands over the source code of the Ciel system. Combined with the power of the Dark Elf, it would effectively solve the energy crisis. Or so they say. Not only are we talking about highly untrustworthy individuals, they just launched a missile straight into a residential district, just for the sake of immediately getting a hold of the Dark Elf. That's why Ciel declines the truce. They don't take kindly to that response, as enemy troops are rapidly approaching the Resistance base in response to that refusal. Most of these levels are composed of rehashes from the previous games. Although it comes down to aesthetics more than anything. You have a desert level, yet another forest with Sand Triangle playing in the background, and the winter base. Oh, and who could forget the classic New Arcadia level, packed with a billion insta-kill spikes. It's not that complex actually, you just need careful movement. As soon as we reach the top of the tower, we meet with Copy X, rocking the same moveset as last time. Sadly, he hasn't learned any new tricks. Perhaps throwing in something new would have helped because he gets beaten a second time, begging for Weil's help. However, the real X comes in to deliver the bad news. Weil has left long ago and he won't be assisting Copy X, which utterly infuriates the doppelganger, being treated like a moron.
I am not a moron!
And here comes Weil's ultimate 4D chess move. Having witnessed the previous encounter, he knew damn well Copy X would transform in his angelic form. But doing so activated a microbomb that fully obliterated him. As soon as he dies, Weil speaks to all of New Arcadia to announce his assassination at the hands of extremists. And because of legislation, he automatically assumes position of New Arcadia's new ruler. It's made even worse by the fact the citizens were never made aware of Copy X's first death. All this time the humans knew nothing, all comfortable and cozy while fed New Arcadian propaganda. And now they would soon be in for a rude awakening, but that can wait. That being said, not enough is known about Weil, much less what he plans to do with New Arcadia in the palm of his hand. Nothing good, that's for certain, but digging deeper into both his background and into New Arcadian facilities would certainly help out. That's where the next 4 missions come in. Is that a fucking Pianta? After beating Copy X, you get a hold of a brand new equipable. It was somewhat teased after beating Mantis here, when you get your hands on the light body chip. But now it's more apparent given it's a foot chip, not a body one. Replacing the form system from 02 are the parts, for head, body and foot. There's slight increments to Zero's capabilities, and most of them are on the mediocre side. And then you have the double jump, which trivializes a lot of obstacles. Some of them are given to you by the bosses, while others you have to find in secret discs. Don't worry, the double jump is behind the boss. In short, they're much better than the form since they inherently present no downsides, and their unlocking methods are on bullshit. Okay, I delayed this for long enough. The Cyberelf system is also at its best in this game. You still have the classic features of permanently consuming one and losing score as a result. But now there's the brand new addition of Satellite Elves. Certain Cyberelves can be equipped as Satellite, meaning the effect is active but only as long as you want. They don't die in the process, they don't reduce your score, and they can be enabled and disabled as much as you like. You can only equip 2 to balance out this freedom of usage, but as a treat, you have this gate that leads to cyberspace. Everything here is more green than Shrek's ass, but every single cyber elf will be activated automatically at max level. It's amusing to see when you manage to get all of them. The downside is that you can't pick up secret discs, and you lose a few points as a penalty. Also, you can't go into bosses with cyberspace enabled, you have to leave right before them. Still, it's fun to occasionally check it out, and outright obliterate everything. I will miss the old cyber elf layout though, that felt a lot more visually organized. After a few missions where we get a couple of important details regarding Wile and Omega, it's up to the operators and CL to decipher this information. For now, we check in on Harpuya, who is not happy at all to have been helped by the Resistance. Because it's not like he would have returned the favor or anything, no, Sage Harpuya here would never commit such heresy. Servo then accentuates that he basically acted purely based on what he believes in, and his true characters come to light once again. He shows nothing but utter disdain towards anything that poses a threat to humanity, and Wile is precisely that. But despite his injuries, he chooses to go alone. That cannot turn out well. Still, even with enough evidence to prove he's beyond redemption, we know little about this Wile individual. So what did CL find out? Dr. Wile was once a respected scientist and a major contributor to the eradication of the Maverick Wars. After another scientist was successful in the creation of the Mother Elf, the one cure for the Sigma virus, he strongly believed that Reploids had to be held accountable for their actions and be fully subjugated under the rule of a single almighty Reploid. This was labeled as Project El Piso, the very same TK-31 found a few years ago. Despite general approval, X declined such a request, firmly believing that coexistence between human and Reploid was possible. Wile did not take such a decision kindly. He would go on to place a curse on the Mother Elf, thus transforming her into the Dark Elf, and from her power, he would create replicas known as Baby Elves, as means to control Reploids with ease. Thus, the Elf Wars would take place, a catastrophe to soon become even greater than the Maverick Wars. Countless Reploids would fight each other in a chaotic, seemingly endless struggle. Witnessing such a mass destruction, Project El Piso was approved, and with his colossal Reploid Omega, the operation was ready to take place. Wile unleashes Omega on the battlefield alongside an army of golems, with the command to attack anything in sight. But by the skin of their teeth, X and Zero were successful in defeating Omega, and putting a stop to the horror that was the Elf Wars. In the end, 90% of Reploids and 60% of humanity were killed during the wars. For comparison, 60% of today's global population is about 4.8 billion people, slightly above the entire population of Asia. Omega was banished to space in a gargantuan fortress, and similarly, Dr. Wile would be left powerless and banished from the then brand new utopia, New Arcadia. But the Dark Elf still posed a threat, which is why X would use his body to seal her within the depths of New Arcadia, until the final events of Mega Man Zero 2. Needless to say, this Project El Piso of his, there's a good chance he's gonna try that again now that he has the Dark Elf and Omega under his control. And rightfully so, Dr. Wile calls in to congratulate CL for arriving at such a conclusion. Not that it matters anymore, as Omega is now ready to carry on Project El Piso. All Reploids in the world, including those in the Resistance, are now under Wile's control. But just when things were turning bleak, X is able to get rid of Omega's influence at the base. Now begins the final stretch as Zero ventures into Wile's underground domain, Sub-Arcadia. This level doesn't feature anything special. That is until you enter cyberspace and find the teleporter taking you to "Holy shit, are you still alive?" Not exactly, Phantom is still dead, but his soul finds itself within the cyberspace. Seemingly knowing everything about Zero, he crosses blades with the Crimson Reploid once again, and boy does he pack a punch for a secret boss. If you've been collecting several cyber elves across the game, they'll be put to good use here because of how cyberspace works. That makes the boss fight easier, but I almost would have preferred if they were disabled, to get the best experience possible. But after losing to Zero for the third time, he wishes him luck in defeating Omega and leaves. Alright, see ya in 300 years, mate. One rematch with the Baby Elves later, and the time has come to confront Omega. Before the final battle can take place, Wile gloats about the joy of being able to have the world at your fingertips, revealing he was human all along. There's an interesting argument here that only a human could be capable of truly recognizing and gaining satisfaction of so much power. A machine has no intrinsic need for any of that, although there have been cases of Reploids being ecstatic with power. To Zero, all of this is irrelevant, as he only sees Wile as yet another Maverick. Omega shows up to finish the job, and the final fight is upon us. Omega starts off just about the same as the intro. Same attacks plus this new sword stab. This one is completely doable. The second phase is about oh what the fuck? So we have a giant Zero and X acting as Omega's arms. It's kinda fucked. Anyway, you have less space to move around, but with the double jump most of these attacks should be easy enough. Even though in some cases it's still difficult to dodge. Still, once you get the upper hand, we take down Omega for good, right? A familiar scenery. We're back at the place where everything began, Zero's resting grounds. Then Wile drops the biggest plot twist by far. The Zero you've been playing as is fake. A detail I've purposefully omitted until now is that in order to analyze possible solutions for the Maverick Wars, Dr. Wile and the other scientists made extensive analysis of Zero's original body. This of course allowed him to discover his destructive capabilities, so once Project El Piso was approved, he would take hold of the original Zero. As to why he doesn't look like the original, really boils down to just an art style thing. A replica was created by the institute that put him in stasis, containing Zero's memories, and serving as a backup should he reawaken. That's precisely what happened by the end of the Elf Wars, and once the deed was done, he would return to his slumber. But times have drastically changed. The replica and the original confront at last to settle who is the real Zero. I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but this final boss is on the easy side. Sure, your first time around you will get your ass handed, but once you figure out Omega's attacks, it's a lot more predictable. He has major delays between attacks and staggers frequently with the sword. But people don't praise this boss fight necessarily because of its difficulty, or lack thereof. They praise it because of what it represents. This is Zero overcoming his violent self, the one that Dr. Wily wanted to achieve all along, and the one we caught a glimpse of in X5. Everything thematically about this fight works, and it ends in spectacular fashion. The battle has exhausted both warriors, with Omega seemingly having the upper hand. Suddenly Harpuya, Fafnir and Leviathan descend to even the odds, acknowledging the most dangerous target at hand. And Cyberelf X shows up as well, reassuring Zero that the original was a body, no more no less. He knew all along, but also knew such a detail was irrelevant. And Zero agrees, by terminating Omega with extreme prejudice. The explosion was incredibly potent. It was able to render Zero unconscious, and unfortunately it took out the Guardians for good. It's a shame we won't see these guys again. Most of the time they were pricks, but at least they were entertaining ones. Although without the help of audio dramas, Harpuya was the only one that had any sort of development. Leviathan and Fafnir mostly came across as too obsessed with fighting Zero. And Phantom, well, you know, still really good antagonists throughout. X speaks to Zero for the final time. After his body was destroyed, he didn't have much time left, and now it is up. He entrusts Zero that he will finish the job and take down Dr. Wile once and for all. After all, X believes in him. Zero wakes up at the Resistance base, having been carried by the Dark Elf, or rather, the Mother Elf. Wile's curse has been broken at last, and she's free to go to wherever she pleases. We never see her again. As for Zero, really he didn't care much about whether he was a fake or not. At most, he posed the question of whether he was the real one at the start of 01, but it was largely because of his amnesia. Now that he recalls all of his past memories, and with a clear resolve, Zero is ready to continue fighting until Wile's rule is over. Jesus Christ, there was a lot of story to uncover. 03 definitely had a finale theme going on, which is made more apparent by this being the planned final entry. This has become one of the most acclaimed Mega Man titles thanks to both a highly polished gameplay, great visuals and music for the system, and a gripping story several titles in the making. But then, Capcom and Inti Creates decided, fuck it, one more, so they had to leave enough loose ends for a fourth entry. But many plot threads are closed. X and the Guardians are dead, Zero finally recovered all of his memories, Omega is now gone, and the Mother Elf is finally free. Whatever 04 has in store will unfortunately pale in comparison with what's been presented here. But I'd like to present things in a different light. What we saw so far could be labeled as the New Arcadia trilogy, going from Zero's awakening to Omega's death, and the following titles could be labeled as the Ragnarok trilogy, an event whose consequences would be felt for years to come.
Game Boy Advance. Capcom.
Mega Man 04 is in a difficult spot. As mentioned earlier, the story of 03 definitely felt like a final entry, but there was just a small, oh so irrelevant loose end to cover. Wile is still alive. Unfortunately, most plot beats were already finished, so what's left to cover? How about the one question nobody asked but likely should have been present from the start? Unlike previous prologues that were narrated in third person, we get the perspective of a human this time around, explaining their reaction towards the countless wars and Dr. Wile's eventual rise to power. And what was their reaction to all of this?
Drive! Drive! Drive!
After Wile's hostile takeover of New Arcadia, its residents began opposing his oppressive regime, knowing that they become an easy target at the slightest defiance. Thus, a small group of runaways are heading towards Area Zero, formerly known as the impact crater of the Eurasia colony. However, Wile's army managed to track them down and is about to make them reconsider. Zero and the resistance quickly show up and assist the fleeing humans, to which only this reporter Niche is thankful for. Any of the other humans would scoff at the idea of cooperating with Reploids, let alone talking to them. And therein lies the crux of 04's early conflict. Can humanity and Reploids put differences aside and help each other for a better future? I must admit, it's a breath of fresh air to change the base of operations like this. It's cozy at the Resistance base, but I don't mind the portable version either. The music here even reflects a calm before the storm feeling, like taking a break under the harsh desert sunlight before heading into action. After analyzing the runaway human's destination, the Resistance notices that nature managed to grow at a notable level. Long after the Eurasia colony crashed, an environment control system managed to survive and repopulate the area with natural trees and vegetation. It's one of the last, if not the last bastion of nature left on the planet, and is precisely what Dr. Wile is targeting. After making it to the core of the Eurasia colony, Zero encounters 8 Reploids, the Einherjar warriors, as well as their commander Kraft. Their plan of action is known as Ragnarok, consisting of destroying any and all traces of nature left. That way, New Arcadia becomes the only inhabitable location under the rule of Dr. Wile, and obviously Area Zero has become their primary target. By the way, if you've never played 04 but recognize the fire butterfly, I'll let you know that I know what you are.
Las pajas, eso es!
Now knowing about Ragnarok, CL makes an effort to warn the settlement about the risk of staying where they are, but they're having none of it. They only see it as yet another war caused by Reploids, much like the Maverick and Elf Wars, going as far as refusing any help to defend the settlement. It's not difficult to see where they're coming from. The vast amount of carnage and waste of resources gradually made humanity very hostile towards Reploids. More so if you consider any potential anti-Reploid propaganda from New Arcadia. I mean, some humans still believe Copy X was the real one. That's not to say everyone believes all Reploids are inherently evil. The youngest members of the settlement are more welcoming, but they're ultimately not the ones speaking for everyone. After a productive discussion, Zero goes back to the trailer to do what he knows best, put New Arcadian forces out of his misery. Oh, that's new, we got a slightly more visual depiction of the boss's locations, much like the good old days of 21XX. It also allows us to choose any of the 8 Reploids we want, so routing is a lot more flexible. But level design now runs the risk of requiring an even difficulty, since any level can be a first choice. On the bright side, if you know where to look, you can fetch the 2 sub-tanks very early on. The same even applies to targeting EX skills. If I had to describe Zero Force gameplay, it'd be taking just enough elements from the previous games to leave it on par in terms of quality and satisfaction. But because 03 perfected the formula, it chooses to experiment with what's been established as means of trying to keep itself somewhat fresh, a corruption of the formula that not many people agree with. Let's start with the weather system, a polarizing addition that doesn't really add much. Each level has easy and difficult weather, distinguished by whether the border is glowing or not. A difficult weather increases the challenge of the stage, and in some cases even the boss fight. Although there may be the occasion that a difficult weather is actually more favorable. Other cases, the effect is essentially negligible, like the artificial forest. If the objective was to reduce the challenge, then it comes off as redundant, because 04 has an actual easy mode integrated. The weather also affects whether you can capture EX skills, taking over the rankings role. So now that all you need is difficult weather to get EX skills, what purpose does rankings serve? Bragging rights. I mean, it's no different than 01 if you think about it, and it makes EX skill acquisition less annoying to newcomers. Speaking of EX skills, have you noticed the lack of a certain feature? Apparently element chips have been removed entirely, and became fully integrated within EX skills. That makes bosses slightly more difficult to take down, except for ice bosses. These two are ridiculously easy with the Rising Slash. It's a shame the element chips were eliminated. Whether you were a big fan of the feature or not, it's essentially less customization for your offense capabilities. I will say, some of the buster options are pretty effective. I've seen nasty work done with the Time Stopper. On the more positive end, we have 2 new assets we can work with. First off is grabbing on bars. It returns from Mega Man X5 and 6, but a lot more restricted. You can only stand in place and have to jump in order to move forwards, which is fine. The level design is adjusted to work around that limitation. Then we have the new kid in town, the Zero Knuckle. Have you ever wanted to try out the small enemy's weapons?
No.
Finishing off a foe with the Zero Knuckle will allow you to steal its weapon and use it for yourself. The main problem is that most of them have garbage outputs. Except for the axe, that thing actually hits pretty hard. There's other instances where it can be useful to try out the knuckle, leading to some outside-the-box thinking moments, or just following advice. It even gets the jump on a few bosses, but otherwise lags behind the recall rod, since it has fewer situations where it's truly convenient. After defeating 4 of the Anheriar warriors, Wild's army finally targets the settlement directly, so we have to put the remaining 4 missions on hold and prioritize saving the humans there. Although after saving them, thanks is the last thing they're willing to say to you. Yeah, I bet you guys would have been able to handle this situation on your own. Pricks. Kraft is also present, likely leading the whole operation. His boss fight is pretty good, he's very agile and his moves cover a lot of range, so he's gonna catch you off guard if you play recklessly. But if you counter accordingly, you'll have plenty of openings to strike back. Still, I consider his fight on par with the ones against the 4 Guardians. Also unspoken rule, but bonus points if you finish him off with a water gun. Kraft admits defeat, but not without Zero taking notice that he was holding back during the fight. And right before round 2 can take place, Nij intervenes, outright scolding both parties. Their conflict hasn't done anything for the greater good of mankind. As a matter of fact, they're on the crossfire, much like any previous wars. Kraft's response? What follows is the rest of the humans outright ditching Nij. They witness her revealing some sort of history with the Reploid, especially one currently working for Vile, and immediately labeled her as a traitor to their cause. It was one thing being unable to properly defend themselves during Vile's attack, but ostracizing the member that did the most for the group just because of her past. That was proof that the settlement was worthless if they weren't willing to help each other. Zero at least goes out of his way to rescue Nij, even with the humans' refusal to help. Although they had a change of heart given prior circumstances, and in the end wish Zero good luck. Of all the things to be referenced, the intro bosses from X2 and 3 wasn't something I expected. Zero manages to locate Niche and says he comes on behalf of the settlement youth, but she would prefer to at least get the chance to talk to Kraft. During her days as a New Arcadian reporter, she was saved by him from a group of mavericks and was impressed by how dedicated he was to protect humanity. Eventually they both fell in love with each other. Oh no, experience tells me that's not gonna end well. To Niche, he was now a different person by supporting Weil, but he sees it as the only means of helping humanity, since New Arcadia is the only safe haven for life. But only because it's enforced as such. And speak of the devil, Dr. Weil shows up to add salt to the wound to the current predicament. Would they die in the name of freedom, or live under Weil's rule? Niche's response?
Flashbang.
After rescuing Niche, the settlement... Okay, just wait a minute. We gotta make it out of the prison real quick. It's pretty cool to see the ice wave in action, just leaves a lot of shit vulnerable for you. Alright, we should be good to go now. After rescuing Niche, the settlement begins to slowly but surely accept the help of the resistance, viewing that their circumstances are not so different after all. Both parties are runaways from a dystopian dictatorship, which happens to be located in New Arcadia. They don't do much in terms of gameplay, but hey, they work as moral support. And speaking of gameplay, we got a couple relevant bits left to discuss, and I sure saved the best for last. The Cyber Elf mechanic has been completely redesigned once again. Instead of collecting numerous little shits in the wild, you now have a singular all-purpose Swiss knife, having no inherent drawbacks beyond score. Hey, Unscripted Kevin here. So I just found out about the fact that you can actually name the Cyber Elf different names depending on who you talk to. I always thought Kroar was the default, but I somehow found out just about now that different characters can give it other names. I thought that was kinda cool, as well as the fact that it can actually somewhat alter the properties of the Cyber Elf. So yeah, that's some extra trivia that I just want to throw out there. Okay, actually I lied, there is a drawback. It's fucking expensive, man. On a regular playthrough, you're getting leveled up to at most level 4. I understand it had to be somewhat evened out compared to the old system, where you had multiple Cyber Elves to feed instead of just one. But because it's a single one, it has to be the more pricey. The highest level surpassing 3000 E-crystals. Most people prefer the former system, since it was much easier to only focus on the Cyber Elves you cared about. I like the concept behind more, but its execution was far from perfect. What was far from perfect was the part system. Actually, never mind, let me change that. What was needlessly adjusted was the part system. As much as I can sit behind some of the ideas for 04, this is where I draw the line. You know how in every modern AAA slop there seems to be a forced crafting mechanic? Well, this game is a pioneer of that, and it did not do a good job at it. Enemies can drop components on occasion, similar to how they used to drop data disks. By mixing the right components, you will create a part. If it was just this, then it would still be dog shit, but acceptable enough. Unfortunately, the game doesn't bother to give you the recipes for each part. In order to know how to build something, you have to talk to the NPCs at the settlement. Regardless of what part of the story you're at, some of the humans will give you recipes that you can use, but they won't give you all of them. I believe you have to replay the game several times to get them all. It gets to the point that using a wiki becomes fair game because collecting the components is bad enough. I do wonder if there was a printed magazine or an official website back in 2005 that detailed the recipes. That's the homework for the comment section. To add insult to injury, you won't know which enemy is which without consulting the database at the starting screen, and a couple of cases are ridiculously specific when it comes to obtaining. Just a needless change all around. I'm at least happy to report that some of them do have cool effects. The highest charge reduction is absurdly fast, and the double jump makes a return. And if you go out of your way to complete all of the junk parts, you get the best hard mode in the series. There is an actual hard mode, but the junk parts allow you to use combos and charge attacks, so it wins by default. Alright, that's enough bitching about parts. Let me just kill the chicken real quick and we're done. Ragnarok has been halted. Or that's what we were led to believe. Ragnarok isn't just a clever wordplay for their operations. It's a space station. Dr. Weil confirms that the Einherjar warriors were a mere diversion compared to the real Ragnarok. And now ready to run the victory lap, contacts the resistance to get enjoyment out of their despair. Suddenly, Kraft has redirected the Ragnarok laser towards New Arcadia instead. After witnessing Niche's act of defiance, he followed suit, but by no means this is a good act. It may take Weil down for good, but there are still plenty of people in New Arcadia soon to become casualties. So while Zero is sent to Ragnarok to stop Kraft, Ciel commands all Resistance members to retrieve as many civilians as possible before the cannon fires. Thus begin the final stages. This level is rather difficult due to some of its complex platforming segments, specifically the hallway, a long corridor that's 90% bottomless pit. It's more than anything a test of patience, with the occasional very tricky segment. Shortly after that, Zero makes it to the lake. Zero does not make it in time. The laser has fired, and communications have been cut off. Battle ensues as Zero proceeds to take down Kraft fatally this time. Hold back my ass, that was the same fucking boss fight. Kraft dies from the injuries, lamenting that he was unable to put his trust on anyone worthwhile. Not even Niche, someone who he knew was completely earnest. Back at Earth, the Resistance is doing their best to rescue all civilians possible. The impact of the laser turned the once imposing city into a steel crater. Now, Area Zero remains as the only hope for the planet. But Dr. Weil, Neo Arcadia, and any of those lunatics are now gone. Surely now the world can truly prosper. Looks like we're not done just yet. Ragnarok is not only still operational, but is now on a course collision towards Area Zero. The 2000s really were the age of crashing space stations on the planet, huh? What follows are a series of missions to infiltrate the Ragnarok core and put a stop to its collision course. The first destination is a new Arcadian teleporter, and I've seen everyone bitch about this segment that evokes the pace of the level to a crawl. Let me show you how it's fucking done. You grab one of these drill pieces of shit, and there you go! I saved you a minute of your life. Oh, and the boss is another reference to the X games. Next up is directly hijacking the teleporter circuit. Oh sick, a Code Lyoko level! Nah, it's most likely Battle Network. I love how the enemies selected are meant to be the most common enemies you find in those games. Like meteors show up anywhere, but the green cannons are a more deliberate choice. And at last, it's finally time for Ragnarok. This is it folks, the final level that this entire series has been leading up to. The mood is just right, the music is foreboding, a constant sense of dread fills the seemingly empty corridors. The end is nigh. But before that, shoutouts to the guy that says cunt in Galician. Zero is able to reach the core, when out of nowhere. So not only did Dr. Weil survive the laser blast, he's still by technicality a human, despite being forcefully transferred into a regenerative robotic body. This being his last chance to make sure humanity and Reploid suffer as he did, he won't allow Zero to stop Ragnarok that easily. Compared to Omega's boss fight, Dr. Weil is far more challenging. His attack pool is ridiculously wide. Chances are you won't be able to witness all of his attacks in one sitting. He also loves to teleport all over the place, so landing hits is not a simple task. Big fan of the attack that summons all of the 8 bosses from 03. Years later, Blasphemous 2 would copy that exact attack. But eventually, Weil goes down. Ragnarok's descent can no longer be stopped. Ciel begs Zero to come back, but he knows he needs to finish the job, as a severely injured Weil still manages to crawl back up and dares Zero to kill him. It would prevent the crash, but would then become a maverick by definition. He would go on from being the Reploid hero to attacking one of the humans he was meant to protect. Hero, huh? That's a label that got thrown around the games a lot. They kept describing Zero as such, and while it is true he did perform heroic actions, more often than not it was completely selfless. Such a banal label never mattered to him, or even fighting for justice. Zero's reason to fight is for those who he believes in. He trusted X all these years and upholds his values after his death. And he trusts Ciel just as much to bring a better tomorrow. His final words? He asks Ciel to believe in him. And The boss fight itself is nothing short of climactic too, if not on the difficult side of things. 2 minutes to kill Weil for real, and his defenses are strong, leaving very few openings. And even when he leaves himself open, the attack preceding usually covers a lot of space. Now or never will Zero put an end to the madness once and for all. The monster that was Dr. Weil is finally gone for good. But to say it's a happy ending would be a lie. Ragnarok is breaking apart, therefore the planet has been saved, but contact with Zero has been lost. His absence is felt by everyone, being a good friend and the one to strengthen the restored bonds between humanity and Reploids. CL still believes he's out there though, and is hopeful he'll come back. If we may talk about CL's character before closing this chapter, she's always been a hopeful individual. Her character began as someone willing to atone for her mistakes, after the Copy X project backfired like it did, and when all hope seemed lost for the Resistance, she chose to believe that Zero was alive somewhere. Sure enough, she hit the jackpot. Her main pet project, the CL system, was created with the hope of restoring energy to the world, convinced that Neo Arcadia would lose any reason to attack them. This was proven to some extent, especially when contrasted with El Piso's Operation Righteous Strike. Even during the most dire moments, she persisted with her vision of a peaceful future where differences are set aside. And now that Zero disappeared, she herself has become a beacon of hope, responsible to make the world better slowly but surely. She promises not to put Zero's faith in her to waste, in hoping she can see him once again. If that's not a 10 out of 10 ending for a series, I don't know what is. This is better than Higurashi out of 10. I actually have been reading Higurashi. Now I won't shy away from admitting that the complete package that is Mega Man 04 is a flawed product. It doesn't do one set of things exceptionally bad, well just one. But it's more of a downgrade by 1,000 cuts compared to 03. In that game the part system was done better, the EX skills were done better, hell even the cyber elves were more convenient. On an objective level, 03 is the better game with no questions asked. And yet, I'm still somehow more inclined to replay 04. And it's not just for the story, right? I always skip cutscenes by this point. But there's something strangely captivating about the level design, structuring and boss battles. Hell, if you manage to get all the parts built, it unlocks a bigger amount of options compared to 03. Truth be told, I simply prefer 04 over the rest as a personal favorite, but I can admit to its faults and concede that 3 does things better. But that's the end of the Zero series, folks, although it's not over yet. Inti Creates was given a brand new task, working on yet another brand new series. A direct sequel to the Zero games that would showcase the world that CL was able to leave behind.
を変える。ロックマン X 好評発売中。カプコン。
The Mega Man ZX series is likely the second least acknowledged series among the other ones, number one least acknowledged being probably Star Force. A contributing factor was the declining interest in Mega Man as a whole, and it's not because of a lack of games. On the contrary, the mid-2000s saw a large amount of entries from multiple series being released. Most of them were good, but the sheer quantity was a hassle for anyone willing to keep up. And now you see two brand new series on the DS and you're like, you know what, I think I'll just chill out with Pokemon. Compared to the Zero titles, I've replayed ZX and ZX Advent far less. That's in part due to being longer games overall, but other factors are into play. Although the title is a notable deviation from familiar territory, it doesn't take a genius to guess X and Zero will somehow be involved in the story, but we'll get there when we get there. The first striking feature would be choosing your character. Female. Yeah, it's not a common occurrence to play as a girl in a Mega Man game, much less as a main character. However, you're not missing much by playing as one or the other. Most of the differences between Bent and Ale come down to dialogue options. Gameplay-wise, Ale can crawl faster, but Bent takes less knockback. It's nothing major, but if you're a filthy speedrunner, a filthy degenerate, or straight up filth, you pick Ale. If you're boring and uninteresting, you go Bent. And the Giga Chad, aka me, will play us both for that sweet New Game Plus reward. Our story begins about 300 years after the fracture of the Ragnarok satellite. It's uncertain how impactful CL's deeds were, but needless to say, planet Earth has gradually escaped the hellscape that was the times of energy crisis. We're introduced to a man named Jiro, a transporter, and his assistant... I'm gonna go with Ale. Before they can deliver their package, Ale takes a good look at the headquarters of Slither Incorporated, a company dedicated to citizen safety and Maverick control. Unfortunately, when Ale was little, she lost her mother to a Maverick attack to which Slither didn't respond in time, which made her resent them. You may be wondering how come there's still Mavericks on the loose. Well, it's a Mega Man game. It's only natural that conflict was bound to happen. Like right now, Jiro and Ale get attacked by Mavericks. Ale falls down and meets with a military group called Guardian, the ones that contracted Jiro for the package. But they're not doing so good as a massive snake mechaniloid mops the floor with them. Ale steps forth, but she can't do anything. That's when the package acts on its own and lends its power to Ale. This is the power of Biometal Model X. Biometals are devices that allow a limited number of people to transform into heroes of old and inherit their abilities. With this newfound power, she fends off the snake and goes on to ensure a safe escape route for the Guardian. It's been a while since we've been restricted to Buster only. In a way, it's refreshing after gameplay dominated by Saber. The first area is nothing complex. Ale controls about the same as Zero used to. You've got the dash and the wall jumps by default, you can charge up your Buster. It's 0-5 but less Zero in a way. We play as X for most of the early game, and it hits pretty hard having access to the double charge buster from X2. After finishing off the snake, Ale meets with the rest of the Guardian crew, ready to deliver the package, until Jiro is reported missing. Then she chooses to hold on to it for longer. And here's where we get a taste of Mega Man ZX mission structuring. It essentially recycles 01's style of display, and you can choose whichever mission you want to tackle first. One where you try to find Jiro's whereabouts, and the one where you try to gain access to Guardian HQ. Here's where the game's true structuring is in full display, and where the cracks of the ZX experience begin to show. Alright, let's address the elephant in the room. ZX's map does not make any sense. Sure, it connects all areas properly and all, but getting from place to place is inconvenient at best. And the central areas that you're gonna traverse the most, like areas A and C, are all mashed together. Let's take for instance heading towards Area E, one of the first places you'll visit. Say you teleported to the Area A2 server, which connects to C1. Okay, just walk all the way to the right until you reach the E1 door. Simple, right? So what does the map say? Left.
What?
If you struggle with the navigation, there's a few custom-made maps online that do a better job at showcasing how to get to places. But outside the central hubs, most locations are fairly straightforward. It's usually finding them that may be the major issue. Despite the Metroidvania aspects, it's no different than your average Mega Man Zero level. Hell, in some respects, it's essentially what 01 always tried to be, but couldn't. Shortly after, we're able to find Jiro, and he's rocking a new outfit, Model Z style. He was actually a Guardian all along, tasked with protecting Ale, as she and Jiro are chosen ones, as he describes it. Funny thing is, he straight up lies about it to Ben saying, "Oh, I figured it out." Looks like if we want to progress, joining Guardian might be the ideal choice. So after a quick trial, we're granted access to HQ, this being an airship to keep the unit mobile. Gotta give props to the music though. Compared to the previous Resistance themes, Guardian HQ is a lot more upbeat and triumphant. There's still work to do, but for the first time in a long while, hope is visible upon the horizon. We're also introduced properly to the second commander, Prairie, first one being her sister. And yes, that's Alouette with a new name, and the sister is confirmed to be CL. But one step at a time. A Maverick outbreak takes place on the highway. Ale rushes in, hoping to stop them, while Jiro calls her out on her recklessness, only to join her in for assistance. Isn't this nice though? If the biometal wasn't blatant enough, the level design is a carbon copy of the highway from X1. We also find here the first of 4 life upgrades. It's been a while since we last saw one of these, at least without being tied to a cyber elf. After reaching the end of the highway, we're forced to confront Jiro, because it wouldn't be a Mega Man series without at least one Zero boss fight. It's a very simple boss, all of his attacks are very predictable. If you struggle with this, God help you. After reluctantly incapacitating her boss, Ale meets the one behind the Maverick attacks, Serpent, CEO of Slayer Incorporated, and his 2 escorts, Prometheus and Pandora. He holds the power of Model W, or at least a fragment of it. Gotta admit, it takes commitment to uphold a grudge towards society from beyond the grave. The powers of Model X and Z are no match for these people, and Ale quickly falls down. And before leaving, they seem to retrieve 2 passwords from them. Of course they leave them be, because the game wouldn't happen if villains were intelligent. Jiro then sacrifices himself so that Ale can continue fighting, by offering Model Z to her. Well, at least it was longer than 10 seconds. It was 10 minutes. And with the combined powers of Biometal's Model X and Z, Mega Man ZX is born. Aside from that epic 240p transformation, we learn that Model W can corrupt anything it comes in contact with. Serpent only has a fragment though, and is trying to reach for the real thing. That's why he got the passwords from Models X and Z. The goal now is to retrieve another 4 biometals and gather their passwords so we can make our way to Model W, and hopefully destroy it before Serpent gets to it. Going forward, the story takes a bit of a backseat. We still learn about the characters and whatnot, but it doesn't go anywhere major. Replacing Model X, we get Model ZX. It's a shame you don't get to keep X standalone, unless you beat the main story with both characters and play a new game. Regardless, ZX is pretty much Zero without the EX skills. You can use Buster, Sword Slashes, and you can charge that shit. Yeah, the charge attack is fucking pathetic from here on in. Rolling slashes take over as the most effective technique for dispatching bosses and standard enemies. The charge buster is still good though. Missions in ZX are no longer ranked, so you can afford to play as suboptimally as you want. But there is one key substitute that has just as much influence as ranks: victory levels. Each boss, or pseudoroid as they're called, features a weak spot, and whenever hit, they'll take additional damage. Just one problem: hitting it repeatedly will damage the biometal they're possessing, leading to a lower victory level and having less energy available from the start. You can repair the biometals for more energy, but it comes with a price tag. So let's talk about those other biometals. If you were horribly disappointed by the Mega Man 03 minigames not letting you experience proper playable Guardians, then boy do I have good news for you. Model H is objectively the first one you should ever go for. It brings back the air dash, similar to how it works in Mega Man X3, letting you traverse a lot of areas, and just being really fast overall. Its swords aren't as good as ZX, but you can do the iconic triple slash Harpuya used to spam. I mean, it's not very good, but it's something. The bottom screen displays the enemy status and weak points of any pseudoroid, which is convenient to not play a guessing game. Model F is a bullet spammer. Its projectiles are slightly stronger than standard shots from ZX, and it can be aimed upwards. Plus, it's the only one capable of destroying hard surfaces and ice. You can also set custom pathways for the bullets, but it's situational at best. Model L is aquatic oriented. It can move around freely underwater and can slash multiple times in place, though its damage output leaves a lot to be desired. The bottom screen displays a cyber elf that scans the area for nearby items to pick up. As for Model P, it's likely the most underwhelming. It fires multiple kunai and can hang on to surfaces a la 04. It also has better visibility in dark areas, but they're not very common, so it goes severely underutilized. It can at least find fake walls, again thanks to the bottom screen. This isn't even bias, always make sure to go for Model H first, both for the mobility it provides and the fact that it's an easy way of getting two sub-tanks, one in Area E and the other back at Area A. The mission's main goal is not only to get a hold of the biometals, but also stop any of Serpent's schemes. We even get to learn a bit about the characters themselves. At Area F, we find a data disk explaining the first finding of Model W by Guardian. Upon finding out that it was giving headaches to the soldiers, Commander CL requested everyone to back off. And among those Guardian soldiers, we find our man Serpent, who betrayed the whole unit and ran off with Model W, or at least a fragment of it. Area H is a theme park, but also happens to be the place where Aile's mother was killed by Mavericks. This puts Aile on edge for a bit, but after talking it out, she is ready to continue. Yeah, this one aspect really doesn't go anywhere. Although playing as Bent reveals that the boss of this area took part in the death of his mother.
Fighting a monkey.
As soon as we complete 4 missions, Prairie asks for our immediate presence at Guardian HQ. Serpent's forces are on the offensive, and HQ cannot afford to take many hits. Yeah, I played 01, I'm even making a big ass video about it, I got this under control. After fending off enough troops, Prometheus and Pandora show up and make a blinding fast entrance. They're headed for the engine for one direct blow to crush this aircraft with no survivors. We only fight Prometheus in this encounter because of course we do. It's a fine fight, but clearly it feels incomplete without assistance. Anyhow, we managed to make Prometheus go away, but not before allowing us in the game, whatever he meant. In Ben's playthrough, he compliments CL when designing models X and Z so they could combine. Here's where we get some exposition. For Aile, she wants to know how come Jiro was watching over her all these years. Essentially, by CL's request, she wanted to locate and secure any Maverick raid survivor, because apparently they're the only ones capable of using biometals. Why is that a thing in the first place? Fuck if I know. For Bent, Prairie confirms she's at least a few centuries old, and witnessed firsthand the constant struggles that Reploids suffer at the time. CL and Zero were instrumental in putting a stop to such a terrible fate, but Maverick outbreaks continued. Shortly after Zero's death, CL upgraded the resistance to Guardian as a means of locating the source of the outbreaks, but she went missing in action. Nonetheless, there was some lovely exposition, but I got more important shit to do. Assuming you collected all of the biometals first to get a feel for them, the remaining missions will focus on gathering the other halves. Whether it's literal halves or just data is up to you, but collecting them has more significance than just plot relevance. Once again, depending on your rank, you'll get access to either a large or small enhancement to the biometals energy. But what do they use this energy for? Unlike Model ZX, the other biometals consume energy for their respective charge attacks. And they have two, one unlocked by default, and the other once you get both halves. Unlike regular attacks, these feature element properties, so they're useful to finish off bosses much faster. But outside certain scenarios, they don't compare to Overdrive. Think of it like an install in a fighting game. This feature enables element damage on all hits, and can obliterate bosses. It consumes a lot of energy though, so turning it on and off between hits would be ideal. Outside bosses, it's not the most useful feature, as you waste valuable energy on random enemies. Although, is Model P's Overdrive any useful? Like, at all? Some of the later areas ramp up the challenge noticeably. Area I, for instance, has two branching paths, one of which requires Model P to see in the dark, and the other a complete Model H for the life upgrade. And of course, Area I is where you get a complete Model H, so enjoy doing a full lap, and then it hits you with Area K, a combination of the most obnoxious enemies and hazards, insta-kill lava, a needlessly complicated sub-tank quest that will consume a shit ton of lives, and a boss that's very difficult to get a level 4 victory against. To add insult to injury, 2 side quests make you revisit this area to collect a bunch of MacGuffins. Just a tedious overall location. Although speaking of side quests, talking to certain NPCs will give you extra missions to complete. They're usually done fairly quickly and reward E-crystals, but some of them can actually grant you parts to enhance your abilities. The only problem is that you can only accept one mission at a time, no multitasking, which sucks. You could easily clear those 2 Area K missions at the same time. Instead, I'm forced to go back to the Guardian HQ, talk to one guy, do the mission briefing, then accept the next one, and back we go. It's optional content, so ultimately it comes off as a harmless annoyance, but I do hope Advent improves upon it. But enough side content, the main plot demands attention, as it is revealed that Serpent was also a Maverick raid survivor, further reinforcing why CL wanted to locate those with similar backgrounds. His erratic behavior led to believing that Model W was capable of transforming people into something more destructive than Mavericks. And after recovering all the helps for each biometal, Prairie has brand new info for us. In Ail's case, a recording details that CL modeled the biometals X and Z after Model W as a template, but obviously less psychotic. This implies that those capable of unleashing their potential can in turn make use of Model W. In other words, they can save or damn the world as they please. In Ben's case, we get the story of Dr. Wild's construction of Ragnarok, and how after fusing with it, Zero was successful in obliterating the space weapon. But it's been speculated that his spiteful soul remains within the many scattered fragments of Ragnarok, thus becoming Model W. But that means there are many other pieces scattered across the world, right? Let's focus on one for now. The biometals have recovered their own passwords, so it's time to locate that Ragnarok fragment. Once we reach the bottom of Area M, we finally find the real Model W. Suddenly Serpent shows up and retrieves it, while sending Pandora to keep Ail busy. Busy for what? Serpent's fleet is carpet bombing the city. His plans for destruction are in motion. Worse yet, Prometheus and Pandora were orchestrating the operation, although they claim not to side with Serpent, but the one hosting the so-called Game of Destiny. What follows is the highlight of the ZX games. Standalone they're fine, but Prometheus and Pandora truly shine when cooperating, and Trap Factory is by far the best theme in the game. Only Serpent remains atop Slither Incorporated's tower. The final stage is 80% elevators. The music's good, but it's also kinda boring just to wait to get to the boss rush. Also, who had the bright idea to remove energy drops after a fight? Boy, I really hope somebody got fired after that blunder. And at last, we make it to Serpent, Model W, and at least 10,000 cyber elves to be fed to it. Such loss of life would make anyone disgusted and horrified, but Serpent sees it as a step necessary towards evolution. A world where a Mega Man can rule supreme and bring order.
Really makes you think.
Ail doesn't buy into that and confronts him. If it wasn't obvious, Serpent draws parallels to Sigma, a man who used to fight for the right cause, but went mad and started a rebellion in the so-called name of progress. And as it turns out, Ail played her part without knowing it. Serpent was in part responsible for her mother's death, and currently she feels nothing but hatred towards him. Unbeknownst to her, that's exactly what Model W needed, as it feeds on her negative emotions and leaves her powerless. Right when all hope seems lost, the biometals remind her of her true goal. She fights to protect those she cares about, not for such a petty revenge. And with a clear resolve, she faces off against Serpent one last time. The final phase is nothing noteworthy. It has a total of 3 sub-phases, each with its own weak spots, and some attacks are exclusive to certain phases. If you were able to gather as many upgrades as possible, this final phase is no problem. The last cutscene is very different for both characters. Serpent tells Ale she was bound to this fate for a long time, as she possesses the blood of the one orchestrating the game of destiny. On the other hand, he chastises Ben for being an active impediment towards the progress of civilization. Because clearly carpet bombing was the ideal solution, Serpent's final words resonated with the both of them, questioning whether to continue fighting. Jiro's spirit shows up and reassures them to leave the past behind and fight for what they believe in, for those that matter to them. And as more Maverick strikes are bound to happen, Ale and Ben will continue their fight, and that's the game. But we're not quite done yet, are we? It would be criminal for me not to talk about this. After Area M, there's yet another location to the right known as Area N. At no point do you visit this place in the regular story, making it completely optional. And after bypassing a couple obstacles, we find ourselves upon the return of the Messiah. Omega is back and more aggressive than ever. If you think this will be as easy as the one from 03, you're sorely mistaken. His stun periods have been drastically reduced, the Speller attack now recovers health, and he's overall much faster than before. The best advice possible is keeping distance while making sure he doesn't recover regularly. And also make sure you enter the fight well equipped, with health upgrades and sub-tanks handy. It feels like retribution in some sort of way. Omega finally got the boss fight he deserved those many years ago. But that's not all there is to Area N. A few doors appear to be locked and require cartridges for either Mega Man 03 or 4 to be opened. Oh golly gee, how am I supposed to get past this obstacle? Oh, never mind. I got that to work by magic. We'll call it sheer magic, nothing else. By either defeating Omega or all 8 returning bosses, you get your hands on a mysterious rock. Ooh. After taking it to Guardian HQ, it'll turn into a brand new biometal. A biometal of none other than Omega himself. Dramatics aside, it does give you the old Zero sprite to use anywhere, but with Omega's color palette. The upsides are that obviously we're playing as Zero once again, so that's swag, but Model O has an overdrive of its own. No energy needed this time. The major downside is that you can only obtain Model O after beating Serpent for the first time and saving the game with a cleared label. Alas, it's post-game only. The most you can do is a rematch against any bosses, Omega included, or go to Serpent's Tower again. Not a whole lot without enabling cheats, but the novelty of playing as the God of Destruction doesn't wear off quickly, so I'll give it that. So that's it, for real this time. ZX was a nice change of pace compared to the adrenaline rush that was the Zero series. It's not as polished in certain choices, the map design being the major outlier, and the pace of the combat is not as fast. But I ended up growing more attached to it. Part of that came from learning the tricks, sure, but still, I don't regret having played it twice for this video. As a first Mega Man though, it's debatable. You will miss a lot of references to prior games if you start with ZX, but it's also fresh enough that it's still welcoming. Thank God there's only one game left, as sure as fuck I'm not doing this for Battle Network.
発動せよ驚異のコピー変身トランスオン進化する戦闘形態降臨ロックマンゼクスアドベントカプコン
We made it to the grand finale, folks. Mega Man ZX Advent. Advent referring to... I don't know. Now I could say that it shouldn't have been hard, it shouldn't have been a job, and I wanted to end this video on a high note. Unfortunately, the reference for that has been unlisted, so nobody will get it nowadays. Character selection returns, but now the brand new characters have a lot more meaningful changes. Of course there's the dialogue differences, but their overall personalities and origins have changed too. Gray is a recently awakened Reploid who has no clue where the fuck he is and why Pandora is after him. Ash, on the other hand, is a bounty hunter, and her next target has the bad luck to run into Prometheus. Oh, I forgot to mention, this game has voice acting. I mean, the Mega Man series has had a bad track record with voice acting, but this was 2007. Surely it can't be that bad.
She's just like me. She doesn't know where she comes from either.
What? A girl? I'm busy.
Hey, do you think you could just ignore me, Headshot? You've got to face the penalty, a shocking penalty.
But this was 2007. Surely it can't be that bad.
Oh, one more time!
Surely it can't be that bad. ZX also had voice acting in gameplay cutscenes. The Japanese version did, at least.
それでも10年前のあの時、カンパニーの警備隊は母さんを救えなかった。
Either for budget or time reasons, this was dropped for Western releases. But not this time. The voices in Advent are not very good. You may have the occasional exception where it sounds okay, but more often than not, it's preferable to watch on mute. But enough about Hololive! It's not totally awful voice acting, but calling it serviceable would be a major stretch. And it doesn't quite enter the so bad it's good area. Aside from that, both characters survive the fall and wake up at a hunter camp. Ash is already familiar enough with this sort of environment, but Gray has no clue where he is, and oh fuck, he's trigger happy. The hunters are pretty much what they sound like, bounty hunters that take on missions for the sake of profit. Gray then proceeds to become a hunter himself because he has nothing better to do. Ash just gets a backup license after losing her own. And their motivations to get on the train are pretty different. Gray practically tags along and gets an explanation about Legion. They're the ones requesting a package to be transported, and they also happen to be the ones in charge of the world. Yeah, they got pretty massive influence actually. Ash, on the other hand, rushes to the train as means of clearing the delivery on her own. Since she already knows about Legion, we get her backstory, being an orphan from a Maverick raid and rescued by hunters. Since they're the closest things she knows as a family, she aims to be the greatest hunter in history. Wait, did she say Maverick raid orphan? Looks like Mavericks are after the package, and who else but Prometheus and Pandora also show up. Things are not looking good at all, but then the content inside the package starts speaking to Gray, willing to help. Thus, a mega merge begins. Biometal Model A. I sure hope the A stands for Axel. As soon as the dynamic duo leave, Gray goes help the other hunters, much to Model A's disagreement. We also get a taste of how he handles. It's pretty much a second take on Model X, but replaces the double buster with a homing shot. And by holding the A button, you use a Giga attack that consumes all your energy. It's not that effective and it takes a while to go back to full, even if now energy recovers automatically. The energy is best spent in homing shots anyway. Changes between Gray and Ash are very pronounced in this form, as Gray has regular charge shots and the homing bullets go in spread, while Ash has a reflect laser and has a homing bolt. The primary change between ZX and Advent takes place as soon as you defeat the first major boss. Instead of carrying several biometals, Model A can copycat its foes after battle. And similar to Axel, copying pseudoroids is not as exciting as it sounds. Bugfire here can move fast and has a wall jump, but his fire rate is slower and not as powerful. And as we progress, the bosses will become more and more situational. This big fucker right here? Complete and utter dog shit. The good news is, the 4 Guardians biometals make a return, although with a slight twist. Realizing they wanted to have another go at their boss fights, Inti Creates made it so the biometals would be stolen, so a bunch of hostile twats can make use of them. Their motivations are at least different enough. Atlas believes that society has gone soft, and with Model W, she believes that'll make them stronger, calling out the weak. Oh, like in that Amazon series, Imbecile, I think. Thetis is an eco-terrorist, witnessing how the world continuously pollutes the sea. Sharnak is a man out for revenge, after he was betrayed by his unit, and he's my favorite design and personality wise. Aelus is the funniest one and he probably wasn't intended as such. He's the living embodiment of everyone is stupid except for me, and those beneath him must be fed to Model W. Regardless of their motivations, they're just an obstacle to get past. The top priority for the time is repairing the train that can take us to Legion so we can deliver Model A. Thankfully, by helping the raiders here, they agree on fixing the train. But before heading to Legion, Gray witnesses a deciphered message after defeating Atlas. The creator of Model A is also behind Model W, and plans to use them to advance society towards evolution.
Really makes you think.
Shortly upon defeating Sharnak, he sees another message revealing the one behind it all. It's Albert. It obviously was gonna be Albert. How surprising a man named Albert in a Mega Man game, let alone a Capcom game, is the main antagonist. I never would have guessed in years. Before leaving Legion, Albert confesses that Grade was made after his image, raising a lot of questions. It's made worse by the fact that Legion has no data on Grade, likely erased completely by Albert himself. It's the same case for Ash, even though she's been alive for much longer than Grey. Now that Albert's plans are in motion, we're gonna have to travel across the world and track down Model W fragments. Remarkably, all of these locations are places we've seen in ZX, but have been drastically altered. The least recognizable being the scrapyard, which is actually Area F, but with all the snow melted down. Despite recycling locations, the biggest weakness Advent has compared to ZX would have to be the visuals. Everything is a lot more muted in color palettes, and the stages are also way less visually interesting. The biggest culprit being the junkyard. Same goes for the music, not reaching the same heights ZX was able to effortlessly pull off. But visuals are one thing, gameplay convenience is another. Advent has made several changes to how warping to places works. Instead of traveling from server to server like before, you have to activate one of these receivers, so you can travel to a specific part of the level. It trims down backtracking for some places at least, but it's not bulletproof. Stages like the scrapyard, which take a while to navigate, can get annoying to leave once you're done with whichever side quest you were doing. There's one exception, this guy at Train 3. He charges you 50 E-crystals, so you can go back to Hunter's Camp instead of traversing the behemoth that is the Legion level. I wish he would sell the device so you could go back at any time anywhere. I don't mind if it charges me per trip, the option alone would be worthwhile. One major improvement over ZX is that you can now take multiple side quests at once, and NPCs with available side quests are made apparent with an exclamation mark. You still have to talk to them at least once, so you know when they will have anything for you. Rewards are again E-crystals or bonus parts, but mostly E-crystals, which are typically used to activate receivers or buy random crap. It's ironic that the last entry happens to have the most mundane application for these things. Another praiseworthy change is the map. It's still very simplistic compared to your average Metroidvania, but in terms of design they make a lot more sense. It's easier to distinguish which areas can connect to what without looking like a jumbled clusterfuck. There's also the added benefit of a few areas being 100% self-contained. It does reduce the exploration element, since you can just warp there and be done with it, but it keeps the experience more streamlined. Man, that's a lot of gameplay talk about a title called ZX Advent. And yet, we have to find the ZX part in it. Fret not, because shortly after chasing after 4 Model Ws, and failing, a 5th one showed up at the quarry left of the Hunter's Camp. Although before going there, 2 more of the 5 ciphers were revealed, explaining how people are labeled as the Chosen Ones. And you're not gonna believe this, the reason as to why it's possible is because Albert deliberately infused his DNA upon those he considered worthwhile. So the Maverick Raid survivor theory?
Trash!
Well, kind of. It likely was a pattern for Albert to see who was worthy of playing in the game of Destiny. And speaking of, it turns out Prometheus and Pandora worked all along for Albert, serving as judges for who can be the strongest Mega Man out of the selected Chosen Ones, and who can be fit as Mega Man King. Gray's reasoning to fight isn't of conquest though, he only gives a shit about knowing where he came from, which has him doubting whether he's fighting for the right reasons, and not for something greater like Thetis eco-terrorism or Aelus I'm better than you mass extinction. Yeah, no, mundane as it is, at least it's an understandable enough goal. Alright, let's get that Model W and hopefully the last cipher. Indeed, Ale and Bent make a return after a time skip. They both have longer hair and don't take kindly to Model W swipers around here. Ale confronts Gray thinking he's after Model W for self-benefit. Of course, this is one of those situations where the good guys are forced to fight because of a shitty misunderstanding. At least I buy it more than the stupid X vs Zero fight in the good ending of X5. The aftermath allows Gray to copy Model ZX and unlock the final cipher. Albert's master plan is combining all Model Ws into a gargantuan biometal. Its name, Ouroboros. Oh, come the fuck on! Gray and Ale call it a truce for now, as Model W falls down due to the fight's aftermath. And oh boy, Model ZX is back on the menu. It's the same shit as before, obviously, but that's what makes it good. It received no changes whatsoever. This sounds so stupid, man. And each character gets a different EX skill. Ground Smash for Gray, and Uppercut for Ash. They're not as effective as they used to be, but it's the inclusion that counts, I guess. After disposing of the remains of that Model W, they both agree they began on bad terms and may share a common goal. Gotta say, the banter between Bent and Ash is a lot more entertaining, thanks to the latter having a more sassy attitude, while Gray is just incredibly straightforward. Maybe he's autistic. Despite Gray looking for his own origins, Ale reassures him that he's the one in charge of his own destiny, not whatever someone else says. And before leaving on her own hunt for the biometals, she gives us a key to access brand new areas. Wicked. Truth be told, there really isn't much to talk about the gameplay itself now. The levels are pretty by the numbers, most of the pseudoroids are glorified keys, and the biometal forms are just as effective as before. So how about a small trip through the Hunter's camp? We haven't paid these guys much attention, and that's because really they're usual filler NPCs that issue side quests to Gray. Doing their respective side quests better reflects the changes in the overworld, like this room starting out empty, only to be filled with numerous objects. This robot snake was found at the oil fields. You'd think that used to be lunch octopus level? Kinda dire implications. If you want an excuse to waste your time, consider hunting down boss medals. In ZX1 you could rematch any active boss. The game even tells you which ones are available, but it's entirely random which ones are. Here, by talking to the rooftop NPCs, you can make the bosses respawn whenever you like, and boss medals are the only reason as to why you'd want to do that. They're challenges that ask you to defeat a boss in specific fashion. They're even active when facing them off for the first time. The one downside is that some of the challenges are fucking obnoxious. Say you collect all 4 energy upgrades. You did? Good. Now face off against Voltron using Giga attacks only. And for what purpose would you collect all 24 medals? From here on, new games allow you to select Model Ancient with a lowercase a. That's adorable, if not a bit fucked by the emulator. It's a far cry from Omega in terms of power. The one thing going for it is the slide, replacing the awkward crawling. It's a novelty item, but I wouldn't bust my ass for it. I mean I did, but you shouldn't. Anyhow, the final stretch is upon us. With the car key that Ale gave us, we can access 3 more areas. The first is a forest where you... Oh, okay, I guess we're doing the boss first then. The first is a forest where a computer alleged to contain info about Gray is located. But oh snap, Prometheus destroyed it so we couldn't get out of the game. Although they actually seem to antagonize Albert, so are they working for him or not? Yeah, about that. Next up is the mysterious laboratory, the same one Gray emerged from. Going here as Ash still displays a broken bridge, the one where Gray had to fight the intro boss. Which means Gray dies in the Ash playthrough and vice versa. Either that or they're missing in action. We discover the maintenance chambers where Prometheus and Pandora have to check back to once every couple hours, otherwise their life systems shut down. In other words, Albert has them both on a leash. There's a third chamber, this one belonging to someone else, Dan 000. Perhaps it's Albert's? The last stop is the biolab. Hold on, this doesn't feel right, just give me a second. There we go. Not much is going on here outside being host of several weapons on standby. He also houses a special trans server, only activated with the data we found at the ruins in Albert's lab. Whatever it leads to, Albert has to be there. It's endgame time, boys, and what better hiding spot than an oceanic volcano? It's pretty liberating to just blitz past everything with Chronoforce. Midway you find a fork in the road, which really doesn't change anything. There's no secret collectible in this area. You just choose whichever side pisses you off more. And within a room filled with thousands of Model Ws, we reach the man himself. And so do Prometheus and Pandora, killing him before we get any answers out of him. Turns out they were using you and all the other Mega Men because you would eventually make it to Albert, all to destroy his master plan and anything in their path. Of course, that would also include us. It's about the same fight as last time, but with added moves for both of them. So you beat them before, you can do it again. And goddamn, this remix kicks ass. Shortly after the fight ends, the feelings of revenge Prometheus and Pandora have been harboring become their own undoing, as the Model Ws absorb their energy. Oh sick, I get to play as them too? Oh. Oh fuck. The real Master Albert shows up. The one that just got slashed was a mere decoy, and he practically takes charge from here on in. With all Model Ws active, the place collapses, and that's about it for Prometheus and Pandora. So, now what? Well, holy goddamn. Ouroboros flies high in the skies, and at this point there's no available airships to fly towards it. All hope is lost, until Ale shows up with her guardian angel. Alright then, it's time to put the soul of that old fucker to rest. At long last, we made it to Ouroboros, an amalgamation composed of Model Ws. In other words, a reconstructed Ragnarok of sorts, but with far more unhinged design. Only for it to become a golden palace midway, as Albert comes by to show what he has from a life of sloth and ignorance.
Everything! A dream house, 2 cars, a beautiful wife, a son who owns a factory, fancy clothes, and lobsters for dinner!
At least the boss rush restores health this time around, as a means of covering for the new bullshit segment, the red blobs. And frankly, people exaggerate how difficult this part is. It takes a few tries because the blobs can insta-kill you, but with good use of Model H, it should be no problem. While Ale holds back the other chosen ones, Gray has a meeting with Albert, and here's where the truth comes out in the open. Gray was built as a replacement for Albert, should anything go wrong on his end. And it almost goes wrong on his end, let's be fair. Had that been the case, he would be the one operating Ouroboros, but as he was released prematurely, he's labeled as defective. Ash, on the other hand, is an actual descendant of Albert. At no point did he alter her DNA like the other chosen ones, since such a procedure would be completely redundant. That said, there is no family bias when it comes to becoming Mega Man ruler, so Ash has to be burned to ash. As for Albert's ultimate goal, he plans to destroy everything so he can rule as a god, and prevent any further wars, any Mavericks, any of that bullshit from ever happening again. Naturally, that implies wasting an endless amount of life, all for the next generation to be pawns for Albert.
I don't think I'm a god. I am a god.
And Gray was not down for that. For the first time ever, he was in charge of his own destiny, ever since he broke free from containment, and his choice is to live among the people of this world, as a normal boy and not as some overimposed ruler. Similarly, Ash is unwilling to let anyone else take charge of her own story. She is the one and only able to dictate her own fate, and with a disgusted reaction, Albert perishes. I'll be honest, Albert's death didn't feel as impactful compared to the others. And it's not for lack of character motivation, right? Both Gray and Ash have valid reasons to take out this guy beyond stopping Ouroboros. But Albert mostly pops in to be the main antagonist, and that's about it. Which is not too dissimilar from Copy X in 01. He also believes in his own cause way too much, only to get his ass handed by a guy that woke up a few days ago. And I'll admit, using the stock explosion that other bosses have did not help at all. He's more memorable than Serpent if you ask me, but I guess the lack of any casualties, except the twins, undersells how dangerous he was. Right before he can escape, Gray collapses, and shortly after, so does Ouroboros. It's fine, there are no casualties this time. He is rescued and brought back to Hunter's camp by Ale. She confirms that Ouroboros has been completely destroyed, and it's all thanks to Gray. But no, in reality it was the real superpower of teamwork. But yes, she is correct. Ale and Ben go on with Guardian, while Gray decides to travel on his own alongside Model A. Meanwhile, Ash remains with the Hunters in her quest for booty. And that, my friends, is the end of the Zero ZX series. For final thoughts on ZX Advent, it was fun for what it's worth. I'll admit I was relieved more than anything after finishing the second playthrough, because playing Mega Man games consecutively is not a good idea. But I still had fun. It does feel that the game sometimes goes with emotions, and very few of the brand new characters stand out. I mean, the Mega Man taking after the 4 Guardians are really bland antagonists. Except Sharnak, fucking love this guy. And I guess more screen time with Albert would have helped further develop him as a major villain on par with Dr. Wile. I can respect that his plan was in motion for centuries, but it also feels like a retread of past waters, since he's rebuilding Ragnarok from the ground up. Also, I didn't really talk much about copying Pseudoroids because it was underwhelming at best. It's one of those cases of neat concept, poor execution. They felt like using keys more than using characters. But at least it was nice that Axel got some passive representation after all these years. even though the A for Model A stands for Albert, but nobody cares. In conclusion, ZX Advent is entertaining enough. Not the best, but there's far worse within Mega Man as a whole. But I'm afraid the story isn't over. If you beat the game on hard mode, the game ends with Master Thomas alongside the other Mega Men, seeking to, in a way, fulfill Albert's idea to reset the world. Boy, I can't wait to see that happen. While people may have taken the message in a literal sense, I think all this ended up being an allegory for resetting the series back to basics. I mean, think about it. Mega Man, items from classic series, the 8-bit minigame, Model Ancient, the ugly box art Easter egg, and another bunch of Easter eggs. All this would eventually lead to Mega Man 9. Mega Man 9 is an important game, as it would kickstart the trend of nostalgia as a selling point, or at least it would greatly enhance it as such. It also marked the point where development in other series was completely halted. Excluding collections, the only brand new games from non-classic series were Star Force 3 also in 2008, Battle Network Operate Shooting Star in 2009, and Mega Man X-Dive in 2020, and also Legends 3 had it not been cancelled. It's a notable contrast compared to the sheer amount of games released before 2008, whereas after Mega Man 9, we got about 5 or so that people really give a shit. It goes without saying, but the ZX series wouldn't see any further attention from here on in, and that's very unfortunate. Despite its many mishaps, it still remains a very enjoyable duology. The concept itself was not doomed from the start. In fact, it was the most direct evolution from the foundations set by the classic and X series. It had potential, but unfortunately most people were either confused or fed up by how different everything is. I mean, fuck, that sentiment wasn't exclusive to ZX.
MMBN 6. Wait, what? Another Mega Man game? Oh, for f***'s sake. Why don't you just shove a pencil up my urethra so I can get it over with? Oh, come on, this game is exactly like the other 5 Battle Network games. That's it, forget this game. If Capcom was going to have a robot pump out these games, then a robot can finish my review. If you like the other 5, you'll like this one, and you should seek help immediately. Coma, that's what Mega Man needs. A nice, long Days of Our Lives style coma.
I'm a white male, age 18 to 49. Everyone listens to me, no matter how dumb my suggestions are.
Despite low sales and critic bias at the time, those that played Zero and ZX remember both series fondly, and typically stick with each other given how interconnected they both are. They presented unique fast-paced gameplay, a fairly solid narrative, and good presentation, but at their core, it's the same Mega Man formula we recognize. And that potentially was its detriment. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, they say. A philosophy all the series adhered to, and kept many traditions present like weapon weaknesses and boss rushes. Maybe it was the repetition that led Mega Man into a lengthy hiatus that is arguably still going today. Sure, we got Mega Man 11 out of it, but that was 7 years ago. And as time goes on, despite more and more people getting into the Zero ZX series, the possibilities of a ZX3 are slim to none. Hell, I'm not even confident that we may get a Legends 3 or X9 by this point. You may be wondering, where is everyone involved in this series? You're not, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. Capcom, still making games, currently focusing on Street Fighter, Monster Hunter, and Resident Evil as their primary cash cows. And perhaps Devil May Cry.
Ouch, that is seriously weak, dude.
Inti Creates, also making games to this day. They definitely got to work on several hits such as the Gumball games, Mega Man 9 and 10, Blaster Master Zero, and their magnum opus, Galgun.
I am rather looking forward to this analysis.
Toru Nakayama has provided artwork for a couple of obscure titles, but he can be spotted doing artwork of whatever he feels like. He seems to enjoy Hololive judging by several artworks of his. Funny how things intertwine with each other in some cosmic way. And as for the Mega Man series itself, hiatus until further notice. Mega Man 11 and the Legacy collections got interest for a while, and I suppose we can give them a quick check anyway. The Zero ZX Legacy Collection is exactly what you'd expect, compilations of all 6 games in one convenient package. Why did I not record footage with this? I guess it was for the sake of authenticity. There's extra features that can make the collection worthwhile. Using a controller instead of a touchscreen for the ZX games is convenient. You have an art gallery and music player, e-reader functionality has been restored to 03, so you can decorate it however you like. Oh yeah, what's the e-reader? Look it up. Finally, we have Z Chaser, a time attack mode of sorts. It's not as inviting as the double boss mode from the X Legacy collection, but it's serviceable. And while these collections were well received and ensured accessibility, it would soon fall back into obscurity. In terms of narrative, only the Zero series can claim it's truly finished. The rest either had conclusive endings that can harbor expansion, or remain inconclusive. Will they ever get an ending? Or will we see the dawn of yet another series? Frankly, the most we'll see is Mega Man 12 and not much else. For all intents and purposes, Mega Man is not popular anymore. It still has a dedicated fanbase to this day, but the wishes of the fans are not the same as the company's. Like I said before, Capcom found greater success in other franchises, thus there's not much interest in reviving the Blue Bomber for a second time. But its impact is not forgotten. There's always the off chance that they get their shit together and manage to release another set of innovative, fast-paced and highly detailed sets of brand new Mega Man games. But such a thing has low possibilities. For now we only have 6 entries that, to varying degrees of success, managed to pull it off. They may be forgotten by many and remain undiscovered for many others. But for those that play them, there's a chance they hopefully left a good impression. An impression of everlasting red.